pag-asa of the Philippine Army. Bangod sa Life Extension Integrative Medical Clinic and Pharmacy, Life Extension Products, Pomety Capsule, kagsang Life Extension Vitamin D3. Iya na pamatudan ang milagroso nga epekto batok sa iya balatian. Aton siya pamatian.
Si Sir Rinan Tibesa. Gusto lang naman, sir, ma-confirm, sir, may prostate problem ikaw, no? Kumusta man so far, sir, ang imong prostate problem?
Normal na ako nga prostate. Last ko nga pa ultrasound from grade 1. Normal na ako nga prostate.
Pero ang nagpa-normal, ang products ng Life Extension, sir?
Sa tingin ko yung Pomety at saka yung Life Extension D3. Basta after ka nag-normal, akon kan makahold na sang dako ka bulyong sang ihi akon nga pantog, hindi katulad dati nga sige ka ihi. Lain gandiya nga akon nga kon discomfort nga nabatyagan.
Ina-continue mo subong imo Life Extension D3 Pomety.
Pomety ang continuous ka Life Extension D3.
In just how many months ni mo gin-continue?
Ang Pomety daw isa ka tuig pa lang.
1 year pa lang. And then ang Life Extension D3 continuous gid ya ever since.
3 years na, kay 3 years na ko di sa Mindan.
Okay, so will you recommend, sir, ang products naton kag ang services namon diri nga free check-up sa imong mga friends?
Of course, syempre. Dako gid nga bulig. Sabi ko nga very clever yung gumawa anong brand nyo Sa brand nyo lang na Life Extension, people are expecting to extend their life through your products. Colonel Besa, Philippine Army. May mga doktor man ako nga kilala diri sa kampo nga gagamit man sa Life Extension D3 gani.
Life Extension Vitamin D3, the #1 trusted brand and the most prescribed vitamin D3 by the medical doctors in the Philippines. Life Extension Vitamin D3 for longer life. Aton pamatian si Dr. Manfred Marpa para sa Super Fiber.
Ano bala ang benefits sang Super Fiber? Gina-normalize ni ang aton bowel movements nga mahimo mag-aamblig sa aton sa colon cancer. That is why as a medical doctor, personal ko gina-recommend ang paggamit regularly sang Super Fiber sang Life Extension.
The fast-acting colon cleansing product approved by the FDA Philippines para sa masulhay nga pagpamuhin. Super Fiber, mabakal sa mga butika. Super Fiber.
Super Fiber, isa ka di kalidad, epektibo, garantisado ini sa makabyanan para sa matinlo nga kolon para mapalayo kita sa risgo nga kita matubuan sa cancer sa kolon naton. Mag-inom adlaw-adlaw sang Super Fiber.
The fast-acting colon cleansing product approved by the FDA Philippines para sa masulhay nga pagpamuhin. Super Fiber, mabakal sa mga butika.
Matapos ang ilang dekada, gayon ay magbabalik na. Muli ay magserbisyo sa balita at impormasyon. Numero 1, DYRP Live Radio 1017 kHz sa iyong AM radio. Sa Iloilo ang radyo mo, DYRP Live Radio. Sa balitang may integridad at prinsipyo, Live Radio.
Ang masunod ng programa, rated SPG, istriktong patnubay at gabay, kinahanglan, may mga sensitibo nga tema kag diskusyon nga hindi angay sa kabataan. Gani, ginapangabay ang pag-ubay sang mga ginikanan.
In the service of the Filipino and the world, with accuracy, independence, impartiality, humanity, and accountability. The Allied Broadcasting Center and JPG Broadcasting Network. The new generation. Tele, Radyo Mo, DYRP, Live Radio.
Kasama ng bawat mamamayang Pilipino na nagtataguyod ng makatotohanang pamamahayag at serbisyo publiko. Ito ang Life Radio. Iloilo.
Tayo nga pong sa Visayas, mayong hapon Negros Island Region. Welcome mga Abyan sa pagbalayag sa Live News Afternoon Edition.
Biyernes, Pebrero 27, Tigdusmel 26. Nagapalayag kita sa radyo sa Jess 17 kHz sa AM band, kag 105.3 sa FM band.
Lahat kita nga nag-broadcast sa Facebook, sa Live Radio Iloilo 1017 kHz, Live Radio Iloilo, kag Live Radio Kabangkalan. Kami tagbalita, Abyan June, Santillan, Lacse.
Kag Abyan Rose Febula sa mga headlines. Sa Balantayan Balita Lokal, 3 kasunog nagluntad sa syudad kag probinsya sang Iloilo subong nga adlaw.
Pag-address sa mental health issues ginistoryahan sang DepEd kag Iloilo Provincial Social Welfare and Development Office.
Sa Negros, liwat nga paglupok sang bulkan Kanlaon kagabi mas mabaskog kung ikumpara sa nagligad nga simana suno sa mga residente.
Sa Balantayan Balita National, Maritime Drill sa Pilipinas, US kag Japan nag-expand sa katubigan sa Batanes.
Samtang Undersecretary Miguel Cona ginapoint ni President Bongbong Marcos bilang acting secretary sang DENR.
Sa international, Hong Kong Court of Appeals ginpalis kada desisyon batok kay Jimmy Lai sa kaso nga fraud.
Samtang duha patay sa Israeli airstrike sa Gaza City.
Sa negosyo, 10% kung 10% nga pagtaas sa pension subong nga tuig kag 2027 gin-anonsyo sang SSS.
Sa hinampang, Manny Pacquiao magapasaka sang madamo nga reklamo batok sa vlogger nga si Francis Leo Marcos. Samtang sa showbiz, apila ni Wiz Khalifa batok sa siyam ka bulan niya nga pagkapreso bangod sang illegal nga droga gin-reject sang korte.
Sa balita kag serbisyo, Live Radio Iloilo ang sandigan mo. DYRP 17 kHz AM sa inyo mga radyo.
Alas 5:15 na sa hapon, padayon kamo nga nagapamati sa Live News Afternoon Edition. Ante sa mga detalye sa atong ipang headlines o nakita sa ulihing nga lakatsang panahon. Wala sang may namonitor nga bagyo kon low pressure area sulod kagwasang Philippine Area of Responsibility sunos pag-asa. Northeast monsoon na nagapekto sa extreme northern Luzon samtang Estrella sa nagapekto sa nabiling nga bahin sa pungsod. Sa so, Visayas, ginapaabot ang maayong nga panahon pero posibleng lapta-lapta nga pagulan pagpangilat kapag panagob bangod sa Estrella. Mahina tubtob kasarangan ang hangin nga nagdala sang makanay tubtob kasarangan pagbalod sa kadagatan. Ang temperatura sa Iloilo yara sa 22 tubtob 30 degrees centigrado. Ang adlaw magatunod alas 6 subong nga hapon kag magabutla kala sa 5 buwas sa aga.
Radio.
Ang oras, las 5:16 na sa hapon. Sa detalye na sa balita lokal, nasunog ang warehouse nga nagaserbi bankhouse sa mga construction workers sa barangay Dongon, Biharo, Iloilo City pasado las 8 kaina sang aga. Suno kay alias John, isa sa mga residente, masobra 20 ka construction workers ang nagatiner sa bankhouse pero yara na sa trabaho sang nagluntad ang sunog. Nasunog man ang nagapark nga salakyan sa gwa sang bankhouse.
Oo, functional ko na ka. Dadaga na ka.
Nga may mahingagaw. Pagwaan
din
din ang tag-iya
Pili na, dali-dali mo ko puli. Dali pa, ako pati balay ko labot na. Balay ko na. Walay ko na nagulubra ang mga tao. 8:30 ko nung nagsugod upok na mo. Nagnilupok ang kurente, sulod. Wala sa tao da.
Ang kabahin sa pahayag ni alias John, isa sa mga residente. Sunod naman sa tag-iya, nga si alias Romeo, yara siya sa putotan sang nagluntad ang sunog. Ginapatihan nga naghalin ang kalayo sa linya sang kuryente. Padayon ang investigasyon sang katapusong Bureau of Fire Protection kag ginahibalo pa ang balor sang kahalitan nga ginbilin sang sunog.
Alas 5:17 na sa hapon. Nasunog ang 3 ka balay kag isa ka tiyangge sa barangay San Jose, San Miguel kay nasang aga, Pebrero 27, 2026. Sa nasambit nga numero, isa ka balay ang total damage samtang duha ang partial damage lakip na ang tiyangge. Nagumpisa ang kalayo sa balay ni Rosalie Gonzales kay Silaman ang nagapanagiya sa partial damage ka tiyangge. Base sa panaysayo ni Gonzales, nagalin ang kalayo sa ibabaw nga porsyon sa ila balay kag madasi ka naglapta bangod himo sa light material sa ila puloyan. Payag ni Gonzales, yara siya sa gwa sa ila balay kag naga-cellphone kag nakibot siya nga may nagasinggit nga sunog. Suno naman kay Ami Hirongko, gaon nakakita sang sunog Nagapamunyag siya sa may napanimuan siya nga baho sang aso. Nakita ni Hirongko nga nagakarab-karab ng kalayo sa balay ni Gonzales Kabangdanan, nagsinggit man siya para nga magpangayo sang bulig.
Ano mo kapamunyag ako? Minsan ko doon baho asuman. Oo. So, pagtangira ako sa balay nga piyak ko, sunog-sunog, kuha kami kung lang kuha kami tubig, basya, dalagan ako kananda, balay niyong kasunog.
Ang kamain sang pahayag ni Ami Hirongko sa interview sa DYRP Live Radio ILOILO. Posible sunog kay Gonzales nga naghampang sang kalayo ang 5 kaganom katuig niya nga mga apo, kagini ang ginhalinan sang sunog. Nadala sa sunog ang 30,000 pesos nga balor sang kompra para kontani sa tiyanggi sang pamilya Gonzales. Wala sa may nasalban nga gamit si Gonzales magluwas sa iya tablet kag cellphone.
Sa likod gawa ng kumpisa sa may mga kortina, basin mga hapo, kung guro nga lalaki, gampag rin sa kalayo, tumutong kaya lang kami tabay, dumugay nga, muli na, gadabdab rin. Wala, tablet ko lang, cellphone to dun, kahita. Gulang yun, wala na gidyo.
Ang payag ni Rosalie Gonzales sa interview sa DYRP Live Radio ILOILO. Padayon na investigasyon sa katapos ang Bureau of Fire Protection o kon BFP sa sunog.
Sa dugang pangabalita lokal, nasunog man ang abandonado nga fishing vessel sa Iloilo Fishport Complex sa Barangay Tanza, Iloilo City pasado las 2 kaina sang kaagahon. Gendeklarar sang mga katapos sang Bureau of Fire Protection nga fire out las 2:30 kaina sang kaagahon. Wala sang may nahalitan sa insidente. Padayon ang investigasyon sang Bureau of Fire Protection para matulid kung ano ang ginhalinan sang kalayo kag ang natuga nga kahalitan sang sunog.
Alas 5:20 na sa hapon. Ginpasiguro ni Provincial Fire Marshal Fire Senior Superintendent Bartolome Biliran nga wala nila ginapabayaan ng Bureau of Fire Protection o kung BFP Bingawan samtang unserviceable ang fire truck sa Banwa. Sa interview sa DYRP Live Radio ILOILO, ginpayag ni Biliran nga ilagay pasangkad ng response protocol para makabulig sa BFP Bingawan ang iban nga fire station sa probinsya sa Tion nga may sunog.
Ginaka-after man natin na wala man natin ginapabayaan ang Bingawan, gina-elevate man natin ang atong response protocol para ma-cover ang area sang Bingawan sa iya nga mga neighboring municipalities.
Ang kamahin sa payag ni Provincial Fire Marshal Fire Senior Superintendent Bartolome Biliran, sunod pa kay Biliran nga BFP Central Office ang nagadumana sa pagbakal sa bagong fire truck kag may mga prerequisites antes makadistribuer sang fire truck ang talatapan. Gipayag ni Biliran nga ilan na hikot ang mga lanong para mangin prioridad sa BFP Central Office ang Bingawan Fire Station kag matagang galayon sa bagong fire truck. Sang Pebrero 20 may nagluntad nga sunog sa Banwa rin. Nagreklamo publiko sa delayed nga pagresponder sa mga bombero. Natukiban nga guba ang fire truck sa Bingawan Fire Station nga 27 katuig na nga ginagamit. Sang Pebrero 26 ang aga, liwat nga nagluntad ang sunog sa poblasyon Bingawan. Tungod guba ang ila fire truck, naggamit sang fire extinguisher ang BFP Bingawan kag nag-bucket relay upod ang mga residente para mapalong ang sunog.
Ang oras la 5:21 na sa hapon. Sa iban pa nga balita lokal, sa target nga mapasangkad ang mental health support sa mga estudyante, manunudlo kag iban pa nga miyembro sang school community, nag-convene ang pila ka mga personnel sang DepEd kag taga Iloilo Provincial Social Welfare and Development Office o kon ang PSWDO. Naistoryahan sa meeting ang pag-address sa mga mental health issues gamit ang Program for Resilience of Iloilo in Mind and Emotion o kanang Prime. Nakasentro ini sa mga programa kag serbisyo agod mapasiguro nga ma-address ang insakto ang mga na-identify nga mga psychosocial concerns sa mga eskwelahan paagi sa Prime Helpline. Lakip man sa mga naistoryahan ang pagkandak sang psychological first aid, psychoeducation, crisis response kag referral sa mga nagakaigo nga serbisyo. Gindiscuss man ang pagpahamtang sang provincial helpline bilang accessible kag responsive platform sa pag-assist sa DepEd sa pagsulbar sang nagadata nga mental health needs sa mga eskwelahan.
Sa Negros, masabaskog ang paglupok sa bulkan kadlawon kagabi, Pebrero 26. Ikumpara sa paglupok sa bulkan sa nagligad nga adlaw o kon semana, suno sa pila ka mga residente nga nagpakig-angot sa Live Radio Iloilo o kon Kabangkalan, ginpayag sa mga residente nga daw kasubong lupok sang ruweda sa salakyan ang ilalabatian sa paglupok sang bulkan sa nagligad nga Pebrero 19. Kagabi suno sa mga residente, may pagtayog sa duta silang nabatsagang sa paglupok sang bulkan. Naglabot sa 2.5 kilometers ang karason sang abo, ginbugas ang bulkan kagabi, ginpalit sa hangin sa southwest nga direksyon. Na-record sang Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology o Confibox ang magnitude 2.5 nga linog ang epicenter yara sa Banwa sa Isabela, Negros Occidental, kadungan sa paglupok sa bulkan kadlawon. Lagi sa mga apektado sang asphalt ang La Carlota, Hinigaran, Binalbagan, Himamaylan, Isabela, San Carlos, Pontevedra, Kabangkalan, kag La Casillana. Nakapanimaho sang asopre ang mga residente sa Bago City, La Casillana, Moises Padilla, Hinigaran, Isabela, kag San Carlos City. Yara sa Alert Level 2 ang bulkan kadlawon. Naghimo sang flashing operation kay nasa ang makatapos ang Bureau of Fire Protection o BFE kay nasa aga sa mga national highways sa Isla San Negros nga natabunan sang asphalt.
Sa kaangot nga balita, apektado sang ashfall ang pila ka ulumhan sa Barangay San Jose Binalbagan suno sa LDRRMO Binalbagan kasunod sa paglupok sang bulkan kanlaon kagabi. Ginsekyar na sa mga katapos ang Provincial Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office o PDRRMO ang nasambit nga kahalitan. Nagpatigayon naman sang flushing ang mga katapos ang Bureau of Fire Protection Binalbagan sa National Highways nga napuno sang ashfall. Sa karon nagapadayon ang pag-ibwal sang aso sa bulkan kag ginapalid sang hangin ang abo sa southwest nga direksyon. Ang mga balita lokal ginadulong sa aton sang Pomiti Capsule. Mag-inom sang Pomiti Filipinol Food Supplement. Ang Pomiti Capsule himo sa broccoli, turmeric, permanganate, green tea kag iban pa nga ingredients nga magamit para sa cancer prevention and protection. Makabulig ang Pomiti Capsule sa may ginabatsyag kag may mga tumor sa ila prostate kag colon kag bisan pa ang mga pasyente sa ovarian, endometrial kag cervical cancer. Available sa mga butika kag life extension medical clinics and pharmacies nationwide. Ang oras las 5:25.
Ang FF Cruise Shipping Corporation nagapadayon sa ila pagserbisyo sa mga pasahero na gusto magpadulong sa Negros Island via Ahoy, Iloilo pakadto sa EB Magalona and vice versa. Ang mga temporary schedules of FF Cruise roll-on roll-off trips halin Lunes tub-tub Domingo sang kada semana amo ang mga masunod. Ahoy, Iloilo to EB Magalona, Negros Occidental alas 5 sa aga, alas 9 sa aga, ala 1 sa hapon, kag alas 5 sa hapon. EB Magalona, Negros Occidental to Ahoy, Iloilo, alas 7 sa aga, alas 11 sa aga, alas 3 sa hapon, kag alas 7 sa gabi. Ang amon mga Roro vessels, officers and crews kumitido sa pagpangalagad sa inyo 24/7 para sa memorable, comfortable, kag safe na pagbiyahe. FF Cruise Shipping Corporation.
Hello mga Abyan, this is Vinita Sososco, the clay artist behind Things Bliss. Isa sa mga nag-share sang inspiring stories sa Real Talks, Real Life program sang DYRP Life Radio Iloilo. Para sa mga dugang nga mga stories ang kadalagaan, mag-follow sa Life Radio Iloilo Facebook page.
Life Extension Vitamin D3. Kag subong aton pamatian si Flor de Liza Zaisek. May ovarian cyst. Bangod sa Life Extension Integrative Medical Clinics and Pharmacies. Kag sang Life Extension Vitamin D3. Iya na pamatudan ang milagroso nga epekto batok sa iya balatian. Aton siya pamatian.
Kumusta man ang ovarian cyst nimo?
Pag-inom po sang D3 bala.
Nadula siya?
Oo.
So nadula siya sang pag-take mo sang Life Extension Vitamin D3?
Yes, nagpa-ultrasound ako.
Nakita gid nga may cyst gid or may tumor gid nga nagtubo sa ovary mo?
Oo, 5 cm gasakit. Kay ang ano tani sa akong sa to, opera ko. Tungod nga few months pa ako makabalik sa abroad, ay siling ko dito kung mapa-opera, kay libre ko to sa abe, sa pamilya ko. Nag-take ako actually nag-life extension ako. 2 months o 3 months siguro, inom ko to capsule sa gabi. Tapos, so pinabayaan ko na to, nagbalik na ako sa Germany, kay siling ko, dala ko na ultrasound ko siling ko mapa-opera ako dito. Tanaw ko sa gynecologist ko, din-examine ako. Paglantaw niya sa kay Dakoila to bala monitor. Wala man clear sa akon. Pero may nakita ako nga daw bala nga daw naglapyak. Tapos siling niya wala akong mahimo kay wala gid. Sabi niya, ang himuon mo, siling niya, mapasitiskan ka para sigurado bala ko nung IT daw, doubt ako mo. Niya wala man, pasitiskan ko. Muna ang na-experience ko lang sa life extension, D3. Siling ko nga, mag-astos pa ako diri sa operasyon. Kay siling
Kung wala
ko
naman.
Yeah.
Pila ka soft gels ang life extension D3 mo ginagamit before?
2 soft gel.
Pero subong ma'am, wala nagasakit.
Wala na. Kapatian ko malana di sa radyo ang D3.
So sino gani imo nga complete name mo ma'am? Si Flor de Liza Zaisik kag taga Poblacion Sur, Tobias.
Kinambal ko man na diri sang ako nga pakaduwa daw may cyst bala sa iya nga suso. Siling ko kadto ka bala sa life extension.
Para sa imo anong pinaka-effective nga very convincing gidang effect especially for cyst?
Life extension, D3.
Life Extension Vitamin D3, the #1 trusted brand and the most prescribed vitamin D3 by the medical doctors in the Philippines. Life Extension Vitamin D3 for longer life. Life Extension Vitamin D3. Si Ma'am Darlene Giliaga.
Nagabakal to ang bukol sa baga ko. Ginimnan ko lang ka life extension. Vitamin D3. After 6 months, wala na ang bukol. Gina-extension na gidman ang life ko.
Life Extension Vitamin D3 for longer life. Life Extension Vitamin D3.
Pwede ba makausap si Ma'am Delia Flores?
Oo, nagkaroon ako ng brain stroke tapos nahirapan ako ng pagsalita, paglatad. Sa kadami-dami ng mga gamot na binigay sa doktor, 21 kaklase na gamot.
Hindi po kayo gumaling?
Oh, hindi. Hanggat sa lumaki, nag-heart enlargement na naman ako. Vitamin D3, life extension lang talaga ang gagamitin ko. Okay talaga sa buhay ko dahil gumaling ng dahil sa life extension, vitamin D3.
Life Extension Vitamin D3 for longer life. Aton ginapakilala, Pomegranate Capsule. Isa ka super antioxidant nga kapsula himo gikan sa pomegranate fruit, green tea, curcumin kag broccoli. Ang Pomegranate himo sa mga scientists, medical doctors kag nutritionists sa Europa. Rekomendado sa mga medical doctors. Pomegranate Capsule, the anti-cancer polyphenol, mabakal sa mga butika. Life Extension Vitamin D3, ang pambansang vitamin D3 nga ginasaligan sa mga medical doctors sa patag sa prevention sa mga lifestyle diseases kag pagpasaka sa aton immune system batok sa virus.
I'm Dr. Suzette C.
Ito po si Dr. Bernion.
Ako si Dr. Faye Abigail Fortich.
Ako po si Dr. Manfred Marpa.
I'm Dr. Michael Smith. I'm a medical doctor and senior health scientist of the Life Extension Foundation, USA.
Life Extension Vitamin D3.
Life Extension Vitamin D3, the #1 trusted brand of vitamin D3 by the medical doctors in the Philippines. Life Extension Vitamin D3, the science of a healthier life.
Dok, pa-check up ko. Manog isa na kasi mana nga wala akong kapamuhin.
Sir, kung ikaw may problema sa digestion, dapat seryosohon. It will lead to colon cancer. Isa sa pinakamakalamatan nga balatian. Are, mag-inom sang super fiber, a unique scientific formulation sang nagkalain-lain nga plant fibers, prebiotics kag alkaline food nga may makagagahom nga epekto para sa ikayong lawas mo. Imnon ang super fiber 1 to 2 times a day, 15 minutes before breakfast or before sleep daily. Mas healthy bagid kung mag-inom sang Life Extension Vitamin D3 kada tapos kaon.
The fast-acting colon cleansing product approved by the FDA Philippines. Para sa masulhay ng pagpamuhi, Super Fiber. Mabakal sa mga butika.
Tay dos na sa hapon, padayon kamubati sa Live News Afternoon Edition. Gila-point ni Presidente Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. si Undersecretary Juan Miguel Cuna bilang bagong acting secretary sa Department of Environment and Natural Resources o DNR. Gibolos si Cuna kay anay DNR Secretary Rafael Lotilia nga magasurbi naman subong bilang Philippine Ambassador sa Holy See. Ginpahayag sang Malacanang nga wala nag-resign si Latilia sa pwesto kundi gin-assign sa bagong diplomatikong responsibilidad. Nag-serve si Kuna bilang DNR Director halin sa 2010 o kon sa 2010 tubtob 2015 anti siya nag-assistant secretary kagulihing undersecretary sa 2017.
Naka-record ang Department of Tourism o DOTR sa pagsaka sang turista gikan sa Taiwan sa 2025 paagi sa visa-free entry program sang Pilipinas. Naglabot sa 213,928 ang nag-abot nga turista sa pungsod nga nagtaas sa 6.32% kung ikumpara sa 201,103 nga na-record sang 2024. Suno sa DOTR ang pagtaas sa mga nagbisita sa pungsod bangod sa improved travel access, restored connectivity kag sustained destination. Subong yara sa 9 nga pwesto ang Pilipinas nga ginkantuan sang mga Taiwanese. Ang ini nga porsyon ginadulong sa aton sang super fiber. Amligan nga atong digestive health kag tinuan ang colon agud malikawan ang colon cancer. May koneksyon ang mahigko nga colon sa pagnubo sang aton immunity gani para matinuan ang mahigko nga colon kag subong man malikawan ang irregular nga pagpamuhin mag-inom sang super fiber. Bangod sigurado kag garantisado nga pag-uon sini ang mga higko nga madugay na nagatener sa aton large intestine agud ma-absorb ang mga nutrients, vitamins kag minerals sa aton mga ginakaon. Makabulig man ang super fiber sa pagpanubos ng aton blood sugar plus dungan sa pagtake sang life extension ng vitamin D3. Para sa kompleto nga proteksyon sang aton tiyan kag colon, mag-inom sang super fiber, a quality product of Life Extension Philippines. Mabakal sa mga butika kag sa mga life extension medical clinics and pharmacies malapit sa inyo lugar.
Alas 5:34 na sa hapon, padayon kamong gapamati sa Live News Afternoon Edition. Sa gyapon sa Balita Nasional, nagimos ang historic expansion ang Multilateral Maritime Cooperative Activity o kon MMCA sa Pilipinas ko po daw mga ali sa West Philippine Sea matapos nakalabot sila sa katubigan sa Northern Batanes. Kabalin sang nagumpisa ini sa 2024, ginakabig nga ini ang pinakaunang pag-operate sang MMCA. Asulod sang exercise range malapit sa Basi Channel nga among katubigan nga nagaseparar sa Pilipinas kag Taiwan. Ang ika-15 nga MMCA ginupdan sa Pilipinas, United States, kag sang Japan nga ginhimo sa Pebrero 23 tubtob Pebrero 26. Tinutuyo sini nga mapakita kung ano kalayo ang malabot sang operational sang MMCA sa West Philippine Sea. Kaupod sang duha ka FA-50 sa Pilipinas, ang P-8 Poseidon sang US kag P-3 Orion sa Japan. Para sa friendly flight palapit sa Basi Channel sa Pebrero 24, daglayag ang BRP Antonio Luna kag USS Dewey Pagkadto sa Northern Luzon, tubtob sa Basco, Batanes.
Lacse Radio.
Ang ini nga porsyon makabanan ang dulong sa aton sa Vita D Plus Coffee Mix, no? Kag okay lang. Okay. Sa aton sa mga kultural makabanan, no? Pabalo sa inyo, ang Vita D Plus Coffee Mix ang pwede na mabakal sa mga merkado publiko. Sa Barutak Nuevo, dra sa CHJ Grocery Store, sa Joybell Sari Store, sa Barate sa Gansa Store, sa May Boot Store, sa YCS Convenience Store, sa Bungan sa Sara Iloilo, sa Ira and Shian Variety Store, sa Santa Barbara, sa EMC Store, sa EVG Commercial, no, subong man sa Haniway Iloilo, sa Mega Goods Mart kag sa EVG Commercial. Sige, sa atong simukuturan. Sa aton tagpalamati, temporary na naton nanayot doon ang aton siling newscast. Pasudlo naton ang nabing ulihi ng hearing angot ini sa kaso ni former President Rodrigo Duterte. Hello, Abyan Armidale.
Kindly call the case.
Madam President, Your Honors, situation in the Republic of the Philippines in the case of the prosecutor versus Rodrigo Roa Duterte, case reference ICC 0121, 0125, and for the record, we are in open session.
Judge Motok, thank you very much. I would like to ask the parties and participants to confirm that the team composition is the same as yesterday's. Good morning, Madam President, Your Honors. I can confirm that indeed the OTP is represented by the same staff members. There have been a few changes over the days, but they are all here.
no? Si Deputy Prosecutor Ma'am Niyang, no, naghambal subong makabinan angot sini, no? Kag sa aton makuturan, sige, pamatian nato, no, ang kaundan sini. Sige, go ahead.
The defense, Mr. Kaufman.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I would now like to call upon the defense to address the court and to complete their submissions on the merits. We have to add the
Si Judge
time
Lulia
that the
Motok,
defense
no? Naga-preside
did
subong
not
makabinan.
use, but you can use all your time. We will have a break at 10:30, and then we will continue in the afternoon. So, Mr. Kaufman, please proceed, and you must respect the Chamber's decision regarding redactions. Otherwise, I will be obliged to interrupt you each time so as to protect victims and witnesses. Mr. Kaufman, please go ahead.
I do indeed thank Your Honours for that consideration. And we did, in fact, have a short version prepared and a long version prepared. So I'll be reading from the long
Lead Defense
version.
Counsel
and that was
Nicholas Kaufman.
specifically so that we could accommodate the redactions that have been so insisted upon, and we respect that, of course, by the prosecution. So I now turn, with respect, Your Honours, to count 2. And this concerns the alleged murders of high-value targets during the presidential period. And before addressing the individual incidents that the prosecution characterises as involving so-called high-value targets, the defence makes a preliminary observation. The term high-value target appears throughout the prosecution's brief as though it is evidence of a coordinated plan to eliminate targets. With respect, that inference cannot be sustained. The existence of a prioritisation category within a law enforcement campaign does not establish a criminal plan. HVT was an operational classification used by law enforcement, and in this sense it is no different from a similar acronym in another country where I have clients. APOTS, or Australian Priority Organisation Targets. HVT is not a code for an instruction to kill or a witch hunt. It was a prioritisation tool within anti-drug operations applied across regions and units on the basis of intelligence assessments, alleged position within drug networks, or inclusion on watch lists. Classification does not imply selection for murder, any more than it is proof of unlawful intent. The prosecution itself acknowledges the existence of formal operational frameworks, including police circulars and structured campaigns. Within those structures, individuals could be designated high value for purposes of operational attention. Many HVT operations, in fact, resulted in arrest or surrender, albeit some resulted in fatal encounters. For this reason, each alleged HVT incident must be scrutinised on its own evidentiary foundation. When the incidents falling under count 2 are examined individually, the pattern we submit is similar to those incidents falling under count 1. Namely, heavy reliance on insider testimony, wishful and selective reading of police reports, and dubious and tenuous linkage to Rodrigo Duterte. Now, the operations cited under count 2 were conducted within the framework of the lawful war on drugs, and as such, operational contexts are consistent with planned law enforcement activity, including buy-bust operations and coordinated arrests, rather than preordained killings. The evidence for count 2 incidents consistently shows that the deaths occurred during armed confrontations in which force was used in response to an imminent threat, in accordance with the rules of engagement repeatedly articulated by President Duterte, namely that lethal force was permissible only where life was in danger. Across the Count 2 incidents, there exist contemporaneous documents, whether it be arrest warrants, operational records, or firearms recovery reports, all of which reflect legitimate police operations that escalated into exchanges of gunfire. The general record does not substantiate a theory of wanton execution, yet the prosecution seeks to rely, once again, on the testimony of criminals spilling their hearts with a tacit understanding that they will never be prosecuted. In 4 of the 5 incidents, contemporaneous reports document the recovery of firearms at the scene, indicating that the weapons were used against police and prompting a responsive use of force. In incidents 12, 13, and 14, the operations were authorized by judicially issued search warrants. We have diagrams on the screen being shown. I'm not going to stop. They will be presented throughout my presentation continuously, all in an attempt to save time. Those circumstances are squarely within operational legality and fundamentally incompatible with a pre-planned murder. Incident 14 is particularly instructive. 4 individuals were arrested alive. To us, that demonstrates selective and not indiscriminate use of force. In incidents 10, 13, and 14, gunpowder residue was detected on the victim's hands. At a minimum, that forensic finding is consistent with an exchange of gunfire and not consistent with a straightforward execution narrative. And the prosecution and the victim's representatives simply can't have their cake and eat it. They can't say in one breath that drugs and guns were planted on victims and therefore dispute crime scene evidence, while at the same time complaining about the lack of crime scene evidence. Yet the prosecution virtually disregards these objective and forensic indicators in favor of narrow and often uncorroborated insider testimony. This is best illustrated in Incident 10, which rests almost entirely on P1160's assertion that a firearm was planted at the scene of the crime, and the official report fabricated. Yet P1160 expressly accepts that he did not witness the planting of the firearm and merely assumes that it must have happened, before conceding that the firearm may already have been present. Once again, we are in the realm of inadmissible conjecture. We know that an investigation followed that incident. The opening of an inquiry is not consistent with the intention to conceal wrongdoing. Beyond that, as I've just mentioned, the record reflects the detection of gunpowder residue on victims' hands in this particular incident, a forensic indicator consistent with an exchange of gunfire and inconsistent with the witness's testimony, which is notably, once again, uncorroborated. Incident 11. This is the sole incident in Count 2 where direct linkage to Mr. Duterte is advanced. And this linkage rests entirely on voice recognition by an individual who claims to have overheard a telephone conversation and recognized the president's voice while being physically moved from one location to another. The alleged recipient of the telephone call himself was never interviewed, and another person present, on whom the prosecution relies for corroboration, did not hear the conversation. After all, would it not have been an item of interest to all those present in that specific location that the President of the Republic himself had condescended to discuss matters of such a criminal nature by way of telephone? So the ridiculous assertion stands solely on the word of one single individual. The only other corroborating witness, the one who heard nothing, acknowledged a personal resentment that he harbored for the then President, Rodrigo Duterte, for reasons you will find in PHL OTP 000-16420-R01 at 0022, lines 695 to 708. Once again, I can't mention the reasons because it's redacted. Voice recognition in uncontrolled conditions while being physically moved, and uncorroborated by any forensic or documentary evidence cannot constitute substantial grounds for confirmation, particularly where it forms the sole mechanism for attribution. Incident 12. This incident relies heavily on a central witness whose credibility is seriously compromised by retaliatory motives he admits to harbouring against Mr. Duterte. This can be found in OTP tab 55 at page 27. Line and another reason that we cannot mention in open session, but which can be found in PHL OTP 000-15167-R01 at page 0008. For this particular incident, the case record demonstrates that this operation was conducted pursuant to a judicially issued search warrant, with operational reports and documentation concerning the recovery of firearms. To display such an extensive contemporaneous record, one would expect the prosecution to produce forensic evidence capable of undermining the reliability of these materials, evidence demonstrating fabrication or inconsistency sufficient to reduce their probative value. None, however, has been forwarded, because none presumably exists. Incident 13. This relates to the killing of Mayor Espinosa, whose name I can mention, and Raul Yap, who was shot in a police cell. The prosecution's case is largely premised on a witness who claimed to have heard but admitted not to have seen anything. Thus, there is nothing in the prosecution's evidence to contradict the alternative theory proposed for this incident, which is that there was a firefight between the victims and the officers in the police station Leyte sub-provincial jail. Nor is there a need to enter into these conflicting accounts, because the prosecution's own evidence exculpates Rodrigo Duterte for responsibility for this incident. Not that he admits any connection to it. After all, according to the prosecution, on 1 August 2016, Rodrigo Duterte gave Espinosa a 24-hour ultimatum to surrender. And surrender he did the following day. 4 days later, Rodrigo Duterte commended Espinosa for surrendering to Ronald de la Rosa, commenting that it was just as well that he did. So if we look at it from the point of view of Rodrigo Duterte, that is where the incident ended, despite Mr. Jeremy exhorting us to believe otherwise. What happened thereafter, as awful as it may be, had nothing to do with our client, and not one witness can say that. The prosecution's narrative in Incident 14, the raid on the house of another person who I can mention, the mayor of Ozmiz City, rests exclusively on a witness who, for reasons we cannot explain in open session, is wholly unable to provide complete or reliable testimony for reasons that can be found in D36, tab 181, lines 128 to 155, and lines 191 to 212. Contemporaneous documentary police reports reflect that this police operation proceeded pursuant to 6 judicial search warrants, something hardly consistent with a premeditated murder scheme. After all, if the intention was cold-blooded murder, why go to the bother of involving a judge? Official investigative materials also indicate that officers approached the premises, announced the execution of the warrant, and were met with gunfire that struck a patrol vehicle and injured an officer, prompting a return of fire. This directly refutes what Ms. Masita so categorically claimed on Tuesday, namely that none of the arresting officers were ever harmed during the operations. Transcript. T5, page 44, line 24. In every case, the victim was killed, and none of the arresting officers were harmed. The exchange of fire, as reported, is supported by the fact that gunpowder residue was found on 7 individuals, including on the mayor himself, and a paraffin test turned out positive on the person of one of the victims, indicating that he had discharged a firearm, something totally negating the gun plant theory proposed by the prosecution's only witness. It is also worth stressing that 4 individuals were arrested alive following the operation, and that one of them was subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment after the domestic courts rejected claims of evidence planting. That fact alone is not consistent with a theory of indiscriminate execution, but is rather consistent instead with arrest and prosecution within the boundaries of the law and not indiscriminate use of force. So to summarize, across incidents 10 to 14, count 2, we see absolutely no evidence whatsoever of any attribution to Mr. Duterte on the granular level, nor do we see any evidence of a mutually agreed course of conduct on the upper hierarchical level of government involving Mr. Duterte and his alleged so-called co-perpetrators. The record reflects police operations conducted at unit level, sometimes under judicial warrant. P1166 describes operational discretion resting with the local team leaders and characterizes planned killings as rare and locally motivated. P1066 clarifies that to neutralize that word, which has been heard so often in the last few days, neutralize referred to lawful enforcement, not killing, the prosecution's own witness. The Senate committee report refers to rogue uniformed police. To conclude, the evidence reflects decentralization, not control required under indirect co-perpetration. And for these reasons, confirmation on count 2 cannot stand. Now, I'm going to start count 3. We have until 10:30. I'm conscious of the time allotted to me. So count 3 relates to the barangay clearance operations during the presidential period. Incident 15 marks the beginning of the barangay clearance operations. Now, from this point forward, a familiar pattern emerges in the prosecution's narrative. The same modus operandi, to employ Mr. Jeremy's language. Routine buy-bust operations are recast as sham exercises designed to conceal extrajudicial killings allegedly ordered from some unspecified source from above. Mr. Jeremy claims a target was identified through the use of lists. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. As one witness, an intelligence officer, explains in his testimony, the use of lists is a normal standard procedure. Once validation was conducted on a person, X, a file on that person would be created as a result of intelligence operations. Then, so claim Mr. Jeremy and Ms. Croft, the target is murdered and reports are falsified and rewards are paid out. This, Ms. Croft suggested at transcript 5, page 23, lines 11 to 13, is the systemicity of the pre-planned attack. But this is not the case. The defense can point to contemporaneous official records generated across different units or organizations that show clearly that in the majority of these incidents, the evidence reflects legitimate law enforcement operations involving spontaneous and reported exchanges of fire and uses of force subjected to forensic and administrative review. These are not clandestine acts hidden from scrutiny, Madam President, but rather recorded operations consistent with self-defence in the course of policing. And where the evidentiary record supports competing inferences, including the inference of a lawful armed confrontation and the inference of an unlawful execution, well, and with this I will conclude, in dubio pro reo. 10:30.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaufman. So I've understood that you would like to use the time that remains to you, and you have you still have 20 minutes actually. I understood that you wanted to use that time. Yes, I would, but I'm not so sure if I can conclude in 20 minutes.
C'est possible. OK. Nous essaierons, Madame.
Ouais, donc vous avez la...
Judge Motek, very well. It's still you. You have the floor. Proceed.
Across incidents 15 through 49, the Chamber will repeatedly encounter contemporaneous by-bust or warrant-based documentation, reported exchanges of fire, gunshot residue findings, ballistic testing, immediate hospital transport, internal investigations, and in some cases, prosecution and conviction of officers. Against all of this evidence that you've just seen on the screen here, the prosecution offers single insider accounts of alleged stagings, uncorroborated assertions of weapons planting, and nanlabans, unsupported by any forensic evidence, often speculative, frequently contradicted by the alleged co-participants, or yet, more often, complete silence from the alleged co-participants, as they were never even questioned about the incident. And most importantly, despite Mr. Jeremy's assertions on Tuesday, wherein he claimed that the police reports were repeatedly falsified to legitimate the operations as acts of self-defense, copy-paste reports in which victims were frequently blamed for their own deaths, there is zero proof, none, that the only existing contemporaneous documentary evidence is fabricated or unreliable. No proof whatsoever of this supposed falsification in the entire case record. And on this point, let us just clarify a basic principle, that a state document with the appropriate stamps and signatures and what have you is prima facie reliable, or in other words, it carries a presumption of administrative regularity. And if the prosecution seeks to displace that document and call the entire state apparatus into question, then the burden rests on it to produce credible, objective evidence rebutting that presumption. Bare allegations or reliance on single prosecution witnesses cannot suffice to overcome this presumption of authenticity and correctness, nor should the burden shift to the defense to prove that those documents are not falsified. Now, we do not deny that in some instances the record may reveal unlawful conduct by individual officers.
Live News. Balita at serbisyo, Live Radio Iloilo ang sandigan mo. DYRP 17 kHz AM sa inyo mga radyo.
Alas 6:02 na sa gabi sa itong siling pangalagad, mga kabyanan. Excited ka, gadali ka. Oh, sige. Po gani ka pang Diyos-Diyos, di pa commercialon mo na ko, Abyan, Arbidel.
Serbisyong makataw, responsable at totoo, Live News.
Sa leg ng dugay-dugay, wahay ka na. Sige, sana siling naton makabanan no ang labing ulihi nga nag presentar no kay mati si Attorney Nicholas Kaufman. As usual, siya ang lead defense counsel ni former President Rodrigo Duterte, no? So padayon niya ang iya sining argumento kag pagpresenta sa pila sini ka mga ebidensya nga makahatag sang depensa, no? Or dapat balio niya to ang gimpresent sang prosecution before, no? Para ma-convince ang aton sini nga mga judges nga wala sang balasihan ang taran-taran sini nga mga akusasyon batok sa kay former president. Panabalikan natin si Attorney Nicholas Kaufman, ang lead defense counsel ni former President Rodrigo Duterte.
Bulacan big-time operations, and then went on to refer to this as one single operation in which 32 victims were killed by the police in Bulacan. But what Mr. Jeremy failed to tell you, Your Honours, is that one of the prosecution's own witnesses explained clearly that he investigated these deaths in an official capacity soon after the killings and found that 33 people were actually killed in different municipalities and provinces in central Luzon, but that their bodies were delivered to Bulacan. This was not, as Mr. Jeremy suggested, a single incident of mass murder, but rather an improper aggregate of a series of law enforcement operations over the course of 24 hours, executed in large geographical area, and for which we have no evidence in the case record. There's no evidence on the perpetrators, victims, motives, manner of attacks, methodology, in essence, nothing to link them to an alleged fantasy common plan. Everything is just stitched together enough to give it a veneer of organization. I now turn to incidents reflecting documented armed confrontations. And as mentioned when I first turned to this count, the documentary record, which has not been displaced by any evidence proffered by the prosecution, reflects attempted arrests, resistance, and responsive use of force. And you've just seen some of the documents up there on the screen. Let's turn briefly to Incident 17, for which the prosecution has relied on a witness who stated that the planting of evidence was an open secret in the locality and province more generally. However, another witness, working in the same locality, P1208, states otherwise, that he was never involved in illegal operations resulting in deaths, was not aware of extrajudicial killings disguised as lawful operations, and confirms that there were no standing orders to kill. The operational objective, he explains, was arrest. Lethal force only when the circumstances required it. And you can find this information in Defense tab 96. And we see this pattern again and again and again. In Incident 40, for example, P1131, who worked with the individual alleged to have shot the suspect, stated clearly that the killings occurred only in circumstances of lawful use of self-defense. That can be found at Defense tab 74, and you can see it on the screen as well. This type of testimonial evidence is also corroborated by documentary and forensic evidence. Incident 15, the prosecution again resorts to its usual pro forma narrative of staged killings or nanlabans. But what it has not done, of course, is prove this. Whereas I urge Your Honours to look at the screen, where you can see detailed documentary evidence about how this incident came about, and I summarise: a spontaneous exchange of fire after the suspect discharged a firearm, ballistics testing of the officer's weapon, affidavits by the police officers involved, and formal review and investigation of the officer who fired his weapon. Now, I'm not going to sit here and bore you with all the evidence we have on every single one of these incidents, but what I will tell you, Your Honours, is that we have this type of forensic evidence proving attempts, arrests, armed resistance, and responsive and sometimes disciplined use of force in no less than 13 incidents. I don't know where Mr. Butuyan got the idea from that there's no forensic evidence left in the case record. And may we remind you, Your Honours, until the prosecution proves otherwise, which it has not, these state documents remain prima facie, authentic, and reliable. For incidents substantiated by a single witness narrative and unconfirmed by alleged co-participants, I refer Your Honours to no less than 9 incidents. One prosecution witness, P1160, is the sole testimonial evidence for at least 3 incidents, while another 6 incidents are premised entirely on the testimony of P3. Now, what's interesting about these incidents is that P3 alleged that he was only one of a group of 3 or 4 perpetrators, and these other perpetrators are actually also prosecution witnesses. Yet none of the other witnesses corroborated his version of events. Not one. A couple of incidents alleged by the prosecution appear on its own evidence to be unrelated to drug enforcement, and thus questionably part of the fantasy common plan or organizational policy. For this, I would refer you to incidents 31 and 41, which involved targeting of 2 individuals, again, because of non-drugs related conduct. I'm not sure whether I can mention the type of conduct without revealing the identity, so I shall refrain from doing so. The prosecution has not presented any evidence to substantiate any nexus to anti-drug operations in either of these incidents. And for this, I refer you to D36, tab 158, at page 4. On the perpetrator's own account, the trigger for the killing was a personal grievance relating to property damage. There are numerous incidents against unidentified or improperly identified victims. The victim in incident 45 is described as a minor, just as in incident 38, another incident on which Mr. Jeremy focused on Tuesday. And by the way, on the subject of the killing of children, of course it ticks the right boxes for the prosecution insofar as it pulls the heartstrings. But apart from Kian de los Santos, the prosecution has not, despite its emphasis on children, presented to this chamber during these proceedings any evidence that even one victim, apart from Kian, in its 49 incidents was a minor. No birth certificates, no corroborative evidence, nothing. While incidents presented as involving minors are indeed grave, Article 61 requires proof, not emotion. It is for the prosecution to prove that the children were involved in these incidents, and not for the defense, once again, to prove a negative. Now, this evidentiary deficit extends even further. The Bulacan Provincial Office provided a certificate indicating that it had no record corresponding to the names of the victims, whose names have been redacted on the slide, which we will show you. Okay, but we'll pass on. But their names have been redacted. And these are alleged police killings, yet no operational report. Indeed, no contemporaneous documentation whatsoever has been produced. So on what does the prosecution base its claim that these individuals were murdered by the police other than P3? The prosecution relies almost exclusively on the account of P3 echoed by P8. And this is rather ironic. Does the prosecutor claim that P3 is corroborated by P8 when the source of P8's information is in fact P3 himself? Bootstrapping logic, once again. The alleged direct perpetrator, P1201, stated during his interview that he had never participated in an operation involving a child. The other officer allegedly present during both incidents, P1131, was never questioned about these events by the prosecution. And that admission, we submit, is not neutral.
Life News.
Gadula-dula ni siya man, ano man, sa din yung problema sini man. Wait sang iban kuwaan sini Abyan Armidel nga sige-sige. Ha? Kasi may mga importante ito kag hindi naton makuha. Bla pa tayo pamagibe. Alas 6 trasera sa gabi sa aton sini nga pangalagad sa aton sa Mokoturan, no?
Serbisyong makataw. Responsable at totoo. Life News.
At isang dugantos information ang hininga porsyong dulong sa aton sa Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. Maskin pwede pagid ang Vita D Plus Coffee Mix ang Reishi Mushroom, ang Mushroom of Immortality. Gabasi sa mga medikal nga pagtuon, nagkapamato, din nagka-promote sa longevity, resist aging, supports immunity, supports liver function, kag madamo pa. Ang Vita D Plus Coffee Mix may vitamin D3, may raman sa mangosteen fruit extract, the cancer fighter, heart boosting power, immunity booster, nagapanabo sa blood sugar, kag maiban pa nga mga health benefits. Kag ang Vita D Plus Coffee Mix, makabuligban sa mga tawo nga may problema kung disorder sa pagtulog, bangod nga ang Vita D Plus Coffee Mix, may vitamin D3 nga nag-regulate o kung nagabalanse sa sleep-wake cycle sang tawo. Kag sa aton si Mokoturan, ginapay balogid sang ang Life Extension Philippines nga mayara sang libre nga medical
cannot simultaneously be characterized
mayara sang libre nga medical check-up sa aton sining mga branches sang Life Extension Philippines. Pangitae bisang wala gaw to doktor Abyan Armidel kay kanugon. Pangitae bilyog. Ang mga branches sa Life Extension Philippines amo ang mga masunod sa Life Extension main branch sa may Robinson's Place sa J. Delian Street, Iloilo City. Sa SM City Iloilo branch sa lower ground floor SM City Iloilo Maduriao, sa Tagbak Haro sa tubad lang sa Barangay Tagbak Barangay Hall, Tagbak Haro. Sa Oton sa may JC Solita Street Poblacion South Oton. Sa Pasay City sa may Simeon Aguilar Street Pasay City. Sa istansya sa Areas Avenue Poblacion Zone 1 istansya Iloilo. Sa Santa Barbara sa Santos Arcade sa Sebastian, Santa Barbara Iloilo, no? Sa aton sini nga mga tagpalamati para nga maka-avail kamo sa libre nga medical check-up. No, kay gina-remind sang Life Extension Integrative Medical Clinic ang tanan nga tatapon ginato ng aton kagalingon kagi kayong lawas pagi sa regular nga pagpa-check up medical sa mga Life Extension Integrative Medical Clinic. Wala sang bayad, di kalidad kag wala sang bayad kag di kalidad ang medical check-up nga ginapatigayon sa branches sa mga branches sa Life Extension Medical Clinic upod ang mga license nga mga medical doctors. Ginakampanya sa Life Extension Integrative Medical Clinic ang early detection sa mga symptoms sang inyo balatian kag prevention nga ini ang magalala kon mapabayan. Gani regular na nga magpakonsulta medical. Life Extension Medical o Life Extension Philippines, the pioneer in the campaign of health and wellness through integrative medical approach. Ora naman no, tutod naman siya. O sa ano ba sa pihak? O, wa isang ibang nga kuwaan. Kunugon, ha? Amo lang ni tanan ang ginakuhaan. Tinga nga nagutututod dyan. Pero balatan na karon sige-sige. Para, no? Okay. Sige. Basta nasa lapay mo naman dang linyada. Sige. Si Attorney Nicholas Kaufman. Matian mo na kung gambal. Kung di mo na saka ang volume. Sige.
This PNP report appears to be corroborated by another prosecution witness, whose testimony fully aligns with the substance of the police document. Mr. Jeremy claimed that the PNP reports were false, relying solely on the allegation of one witness that the scene was staged. This witness claimed that the handcuffs were removed from the victim, that the body was loaded on the tricycle a few minutes after being shot and then brought to the hospital. However, his account is contradicted by the very picture the prosecution has shown you on Tuesday. Indeed, it appears that the prosecution is submitting documentary evidence which undermines its own witness's testimony. As you can see here, handcuffs are on. The body is on the ground rather than on a tricycle. Photojournalists are also present. This contradiction was even noted by the prosecution's investigators at the time of the interview and was put to the witness. And when confronted by the investigators, what did that witness say? I don't know if I can...
Diyos ta.
Serbisyong makataw, responsable at totoo life news.
Kaya muna duway ko gana mag-cover, mag-amotion yung dula-dula, ilang correction to. Okay, alas 6 sa 18. By the way, may isa kita na ka... Sino ito mga plus report? Abyan Armidale? Si Abyan Abe? May ara sang asawa, no? Nga ginapayag, dadakpan sa iya nga bana nga may upod nga iban nga laki. Tagsulod sila sa lodging house. Asus, barakag gusip mga kabyan. Abal sa bana. Uy, dodo asawa ko gina nakita ko dito. Ay, abik tabunin na itsura ko, tiga drama ko dito. Abi Armidale, tabunan mo itsura mo kay gadrama ko di mo. Abi ko na yung itsura ni Kaufman na nagagawa sa monitor ang gali, ako gali itsura. Kita nila to kung paano magbarangisi itsura ko di kay gadrama ko di. May Abyan Rose, may asawa, nadakpan sa bana, nga nagsulod sa lodging house, lapas. Hambal sa bana, di, do asawa ko gina to. Nagakubang-kubang dughan ko nga ini. Makadto ko sa lodging house kini. Asawa ko gito.
Serbisyong makataw, responsable at totoo life news.
Liog kay Abyan Aldrin so Kenya, pasudlon tani kay dako-dako blita ni sobra pa niya sa shooting incident mo. Talagsas malaka ka lang ni kita mo kahamot gid si Abyan Roso. Do sa nobla ang asawa, nadakpan sang iya sini bana, no? Nga may ginupod nga kaliwat, no? Ni kaliwat ni Adan. Susagusip.
Serbisyong makataw, responsable at totoo life
Sabay na
news.
kita itong tagpalamati, no? I-check natin si Abyan Aldrin Sukin, niya angot sini kay why gadula-dula ang ang signal sang ICC ti kanugo no tudutod, no? Okay, Abyan Aldrin, angot sining asawa, dakpan sa bana niya?
Sir Aljon?
Oo.
Kumusta signal ko daw, okay man?
Ayos gid. Pron, ara-nara, prison na ng asawa, prison na?
Ginaimbisigaran pa karon kaya rin naman abogado yan, nagabot naman ni Castro.
Okay.
Pagkatapos...
Dana, anti sa mga abogado, sina, no? Anong unang impormasyon nga naglupok?
Ano galing nga Roma? Room number...
kita mo nabudlayan ka na kay mga amo ng balita, kulang pa ni sa imo.
Sir Aljon, natabo ini sa diri sa may lapas, no? Ang bana.
Ano oras?
Alin sa abroad ang bana. Sinigid yung hapon, mga siguro mga alas 3 pa, no?
Meaning wala pa sila kakita ay sang iyang sang iyang asawa.
Alas 3 pa sang hapon sila nasulod. No? Alas 3 pa sang hapon.
Di yung pamangkot ko ang iyang bana halin sa abroad. Nakakita ay na sila sang bana niya halin sa abroad, wala pa.
Wala. Kaya ang gamit niya nga salakyan sang bana, Fortuner, gingamit pa sang asawa mo.
Ano ning okay. Ano ning bana? Siman ang bana? Ang
bana siman, ang asawa plain housewife, mga 32 ang edad.
32?
Ang bana 33.
Sus, ang kirido, ang lalaki?
Ang daw mamo pangidaron nila. Ang mamo pangidaron.
Okay.
Wala kuno kabalong lalaki. Ang lalaki na blind ni Sir Aljon. Nag-blind na lalaki nga biyang niya siniya ginupod sa ang dalaga ang yang pagpati. Nakakingakik pa sa mo. Nakakik pa sa?
Todla?
Nangakik siya kaya ang hambal ya, siling nga wag niya kabalo. Nga wag niya kabalo, may ibala kagli mo ya. Nakakik nga.
Pero paano sila naglalahay kuno? Paano sila naglalayaw?
Ang pagkilalahay nila daw lawig-lawig naman. Kagina to nabatian ko basta binulan ko no.
Di paano sila naglalahay? Pagi sa friend request.
Wala naton diri matulid pero namin karon para sa investigasyon sa aton nga otoridad.
Pero sino nang hagad na pala lodging house silang duha?
Sila diyan nga duha nag-transaksyonan. Kaya ang bana, abi, why man di mo?
Pero di, paano sila nag-istoryahan na kag naghagada yung pala lodging house, nagabalalaki sa iya nga. Doon nahidlaw na ko sa imo eh. Gusto ko na mo iyatan ang buhok mo nga ina. Kag gusto ko nga saluhan naton ang nagahinunod nga adlaw.
Amo mo gani, nailang pinagpitas ko sa mo sino mga bagay. Ang gusto ko lang, palanggaon mo ko sa tampad. Kaya kung ang kapalang, wala siyang katungkat ko nga.
Hila-hilay ka lang sa paghambak yan, nagkakadunlan na ikaw.
Bakala ko nakakaon ng batsoy.
Sigurado ko nga nahidlaw ka na sa ako. Are.
Amugit na lang.
Halokan ko ka.
Uy, hindi pag... Hinayang
pahigad ko na yung ara ka sa tubang police station, pahigad ko na yung simungguan ka. Para ka gosip ni.
Hinayang lang, pagsigarin pa lang nga. Hinayang lang.
Pagkatapos ang pila ka minutos, sila ang nagsulod sa lodging house. Do kinapoy mo na ko pa. Gipataman mo gid ako. Ano ba lang ginkaon mo ngayon na nga do way ka lang ginakapoy?
Batsoy. Nagpakaldo ako sa langga.
Sigurado akong ginkaon mo ngayon na batsoy nga
damo.
Bala
ko nga daan, nga makita na kita.
Batsoy nga damo oto.
Ang oto kini. Ang magaling nga damo. Ang akong
may gusto na ko ihabal sa ino.
Ano na parang ka?
Masarangan mo ba lang nga palanggaw na ko tubtub sa katubtuban?
Ay, danay ka.
Nga ba lang nga nagatulala ikaw? May iban pa ba lang nga lalaki? Nga nagapanagiya sa imo?
Uy, wala ko dito magsala.
Manong, mabakal ka mo mais?
Tama na. Nabakal sila maiso.
Ang tawang lodging house, may kabligya maisa.
Hindi lang bakal sila. Sinusunod mo mais.
Ha?
Mais. Lagapit sila bakal mais.
May bata ning babae, Abyan Armidel? Abyan Aljon?
Hindi, ang kabaligya. Gusto lang mo siya nila. Grabe. Ata bata. Gintra.
May bata sa dalawang katre. Istorya nice na nga. May nagwa nga.
Manong, mabakal ka mo mais?
Sige. Ari. Bali, sin lang ang sin.
Preparar mong talent mo ngayon na kay gamiton na ma-produce kita drama dere ha. Oo. Ang talent mo na preparar mo, no? Okay. So ato hindi lang sila nga love story or drama lang. Ni makuha ni eleksyon sa iban at yan Aldrin, no?
Are, actually, ang ining hitabo, nangayo bulig diri ang bana, no? Nangayo bulig, tayo sining nga mga abyan. May mga abyan siya nga, unog upo diri, agod nga tukangon ang asawa sa
sa kwarto sa lodging house.
Oo.
Nangayo ang bana.
Actually, upod na nga daan pag waboteri mo kay upod sa police station nagkaya ko bulig pag ginkantuan nila ni, no.
Nagambalang banang sir, mareklamo ko kay akon nga asawa to may iban nga upod nagsulod sa lodging house. Hindi man pwede nga masoksok ano man lang sila to ma-Chinese garter. Siyempre may himo gisla to sa kamalamalaan.
Ati amagiding.
Ano ba sa pulis? Nag-responde ba ng pulis?
Alam mo pulis.
Ha? Nagupod ang pulis?
Nagupod.
Mambalang pulis nga. Magsubong sina. Gaduan naton ng lodging house ngayon na para nga mabalanta kun matuod ang imo gina istorya. Bawdo si Manasanta ba?
Challenge, sir. Pila edad ni isang babae?
Rin na.
Hindi ko ka-confirm kay... Ay, line na sir. Hindi ko
edad lang gid.
Hindi ko sir ka-confirm kay ano. Wala ko yasing personal knowledge sa isang babae.
Sino ni Abyan Aldrin? Sino ni? Police ni?
Lang sa area.
Police ni?
Pero ang lalaki, sir, ang winang close friend.
Mabuot. Amo nang wala ko. Amo na ang masabat sinada ang asawa nga amo na.
Kasi nga abing ginagamit siya ang salakyan. Nga ang nag-produce niya bakalya ba ang bagay niya. No? Nga ginamit siya sa kabalyo nga harang bagay.
Actually, sir, hindi man ko ka-assume or ka-presume sa mga bagay-bagay. Kasi dahil may nakabalo, nagplano sila eh. Maliit naman may mataka...
Pero pakilala mo, buot niya ang imumigo.
Oo. Very responsible nga bata.
Lugay na sir sa...
Lugay naman.
Siman.
Hindi ko lang.
Okay, sige.
Maganda.
Wala taga-mention ng lugar.
Pa-interview man sa siguro kayo sa inyo from magabot ang sakto na piyon. Hindi man na siya mapa-interview na siya.
Okay. Isang salamat sila. Sir Aljon? Thank you, sir. Sir Aljon?
Oo.
Ano ba makot kay sir? Kaya pa, ano ko?
Sino ni interview ita?
Ano yun, ako ang tawag lang ng kilal. Para sa hindi naman, ito lang nga, hindi pa minsan, sir, kilal yun, no?
Hello.
Sir, anong gitang information kinanakalabot sa inyo, angot siniman?
Actually, sir, hindi ko pwede ka say-say, sir, kay wala. Ang maiguro, sir, ang bana na lang, sir, ang masay-say sa inyo. Wala lang siyang pion. Ay siyang masay-say sa inyo.
Pero ano mo ning bana, sir? Best friend mong bana?
Amigo, personal acquaintance lang. Amigo ko man.
Ano ni obra niya, sir? Ano obra niya?
Sa abroad man siya. Kaya na, sir, ma-call inyo kung anong yung obra.
Abyan Aldrin, hindi masagli magpa-interview, Abi ko na yung pa-interview siya.
Sige, sir. Thank you, kid. Ari, John. Ako lang ulit
sige, Abyan Aldrin. Abyan Aldrin? Abyan Aldrin? Oo, doon magangsal, gid, no? Abyan Aldrin? Abyan Aldrin? Sige lang. Tipunon mo lang na detalye mo da kay balikan ko na ang aton sa nga connection sa ICC. Kuhaon ta lang ka karon kung kumpleto na Abyan Aldrin para tayo yon kita.
Interview si Police Captain Apusta, no? Sa sining batunyon sa katapos sa media.
Sige, bati ata.
Sige, ato ko dagay or ilan na to si Sir Apusta?
Okay sa yang live sa subong or karon na lang? I-record mo na lang? Sige.
Sige mo na ito na initial nga balita diri sa may distrito sa labas. Hangot sining gintukang sambana, ang iya sining asawa, upod sa iya kahagugma. Aldrin, so kanya para sa balita nga may integridad at prinsipyo, Live Radio.
Alas 6:31 na sa gabi, thank you Abyan Aldrin, no? Sining asawa, dakpan bana niya, banay lang sa abroad. Duda ba, imo asawa may gatuka siya to. Pinapamatudaan gid, no? Angot sa Bakabyanan sa pag-resume karon, no? Antes pa nagbalik ang ining hearing, hambalan, no? Si Attorney Nicholas Kaufman sa pag-resume sini ni ICC Pretrial Chamber Presiding Judge Julia Mutok, no? Nga dapat tahaon sini or tagaan sang respeto ang tawag sini ang ginasunod nila sa bahin sang confirmation of charges against former president. No, respetuhon ang ining reduction, no? O kon ang ining mga paglimit, paghatag sang ang tawag sini pag-screen sang iban nga sensitive nga mga information as to the hearing kag sa pagpresentar sini kita mo may mga tabon-tabon to, no? Ang pila ka mga dokumento mga kabyanan, no? So ini ang ikatatlo kagatapusan nga hearing kag direto babalaan karon ang mga desisyon diri sa aton nga mga judges angot sini.
4 individuals were
si
arrested.
Nicholas Kaufman.
To us, that demonstrates selective and not indiscriminate use of force. In incidents 10, 13, and 14, gunpowder residue was detected on the victim's hands. At a minimum, that forensic finding is consistent with an exchange of gunfire and not consistent with a straightforward execution narrative. And the prosecution and the victim's representatives simply can't have their cake and eat it. They can't say in one breath that drugs and guns were planted on victims and therefore dispute crime scene evidence, while at the same time complaining about the lack of crime scene evidence. Yet the prosecution virtually disregards these objective and forensic indicators in favor of narrow and often uncorroborated insider testimony. This is best illustrated in Incident 10, which rests almost entirely on P1160's assertion that a firearm was planted at the scene of the crime, and the official report fabricated. Yet P1160 expressly accepts that he did not witness the planting of the firearm and merely assumes that it must have happened.
Serbisyong makataw, responsable at totoo life news.
Alas 6:34 na sa gabi sa aton sinimo kultural makabanan, no. Portion ini sa pag-present kay na ni Nicholas Kaufman sa iya sining pag atubang sa aton sining mga judges sa ing nikatatlong confirmation of charges against former President Rodrigo Duterte. Dugangan nato ni pagkatapos sa pila importante nga pagnomdom. Oras alas 6:35.
Ang FF Cruise Shipping Corporation nagapadayon sa ila pagserbisyo sa mga pasahero na gusto magpadulong sa Negros Island via Ahoy, Iloilo pakadto sa EB Magalona and vice versa. Ang mga temporary schedules of FF Cruise roll-on roll-off trips halin Lunes tub-tub Domingo sang kada semana amo ang mga masunod. Ahoy, Iloilo to EB Magalona, Negros Occidental alas 5 sa aga, alas 9 sa aga, ala 1 sa hapon, kag alas 5 sa hapon. EB Magalona, Negros Occidental to Ahoy, Iloilo, alas 7 sa aga, alas 11 sa aga, alas 3 sa hapon, kag alas 7 sa gabi. Ang amon mga Roro vessels, officers and crews komitido sa pagpangalagad sa inyo 24/7 para sa memorable, comfortable, kag safe na pagbiyahe. FF Cruise Shipping Corporation.
Maputi, malumok, kag mapino nga panit. Amo bala ini ang imo mga handog? White Tomato Capsule by Dr. Frey ang imo kinahanglanon. Mayara ini sang White Tomato Extract nga puno sang phytoin kag phytofluin nga lunsay potent and powerful antioxidant compounds. May reduced na porma sang glutathione nga madasig maabsorb sang aton nga selula. Ang White Tomato Capsule by Dr. Frey effective sa pagbuhin sang dark spots, acne scars, freckles, melasma kag iban pa nga mga problema sa panit. Mag-inom sang White Tomato Capsule by Dr. Frey 1 to 2 capsules kada adlaw kag makita ang epekto pagkatapos ang 2-3 ka bulan nga pag-inom. White Tomato Capsule by Dr. Frey 100% nga himo sa Switzerland sang Swiss Energy Pharma. Mabakal sa mga pharmacies kag sa mga life extension integrative medical clinics and pharmacies.
From breaking news to heartwarming stories.
From powerful interviews to trending topics.
DYRP Live Radio Iloilo has it all.
And we are just getting started.
Tune in to Live Radio Iloilo programs.
From Monday to Saturday, 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. in Bukada sa Aga.
6 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. Live News Morning Edition.
7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Punto por punto. Just 17.
9:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. Live Extension Program.
10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Viral, real or scripted.
11 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Live Radio Regional News.
11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Iloilo in Focus.
1 p.m. to 3 p.m. That's live.
3 p.m. to 3:05 p.m. Live news break.
3:05 p.m. to 4 p.m. Presinto Jess 17.
4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Barangay Jess 17.
5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Live News Afternoon Edition.
6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Crossfire.
8 p.m. to 9:45 p.m. 10:17 Evening Patrol.
9:45 p.m. to 10 p.m. Live Rosary. Para sa balita na may integridad
At prinsipyo,
Live Radio.
Kung kamo nagapangita sa isa ka clinically proven kag scientifically validated nga produkto luwas sa paggamit sa life extension vitamin D3, ginapakilala ang POMI-T. POMI-T ginhimo sang grupo sa mga medical doctors, scientists kag nutritionists kag ginapangunahan ni Dr. Robert Thomas ng Cambridge University Hospital sa UK. Sigurado kag makabulig sang dako para matagaan kita proteksyon sa pagtugas ang cancer sa aton lawas. POMI-T. POMI-T available sa mga butika. Highly recommended sa mga medical doctors diri sa Life Extension Medical Clinics.
Ako si Dr. Faye Abigail Fortich, isang private medical doctor. Ang Life Extension Vitamin D3 ay isang vitamin hormone na sumusuporta sa pagprotekta laban sa sakit na cancer. Ang Life Extension Vitamin D3 ay mabisa rin sa pag-control ang blood sugar level lalo na sa mga diabetic patients at iba pa. Ang Life Extension Vitamin D3 ay dekalidad, puro at epektibo na food supplement na kailangan natin araw-araw. Kaya as a medical doctor, inaanyayahan ko kayong lahat sa pag-inom ng Life Extension Vitamin D3.
Life Extension Philippines Group of Medical Clinics and Pharmacies.
Maayong adlaw sa tanan. Ako si Dr. Bernard Caspe, Medical Director sa Life Extension Philippines, nga naghatag sang libre nga konsultasyon sa Life Extension Medical Clinics. Gina-promote ko kag na-endorso sa tanan nga mga pumuluyo kag mas nagid sa mga nag-edad 40 kag pasaka nga magpa-regular medical check-up para maintain naton ang nami kag healthy nga panglawason. Paagi sa regular medical check-up sa aton mga licensed doctor, temprano pa nga ma-detect kung mabalaan kita may ara sa mga masakit kag temprano man nga mapadapatan dayon sa mga bulong para malikawan naton ang paggrabe sini nga pwede manghatag sa mga komplikasyon kag resulta sa temprano nga pagkapatay. Protektahan ang aton lawas. Magpa-regular medical check-up para sa healthy nga komunidad.
Life Extension Philippines Group of Medical Clinics and Pharmacies for longer life. Nagbalik na ang pinakauna kag paborito nyo nga kape nga may vitamin D3, reishi mushroom kag mangosteen fruit extract. Subong Vita D Plus Coffee Mix na. Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. Perfect combination sa tatlo ka makagagahom kag natural nga mga ingrediente para sa ikayong lawas mo. Aprobado sang FDA. Ugalion magkape sang Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. May kape ka na, may vitamin D3 ka pa. Vita D Plus Coffee Mix.
Mabakal na sa mga butika.
Life Extension Vitamin D3.
Ako si Dr. Faye Abigail Fortich. Gipili nako ang Life Extension Vitamin D3 kay kani usa ka standalone D3 nga puro potent na ay kwalidad na mataas og bioavailability. Ang soft gel ani niya gikan sa extra virgin olive oil mixed with rosemary extract para ma-maintainar ang iyang ka-freshness and potency sa pag-inom nato ini. Kani siya 100% gikan gyud sa United States. The Life Extension Foundation na naay solid track record and credibility since 1980. Kani sila na awarded by consumerlove.com as one of the top-rated vitamin D3 brands in the US. Kani siya pwede sa mga bata, buntis, nagpasuso na mga inahan, ug maski katong mga na-maintenance na mga tambal. Kaya ang Life Extension Vitamin D3 is prescribed and endorsed by medical doctors here and abroad. So why choose suboptimal? Choose the best. Choose Life Extension Vitamin D3.
Life Extension Vitamin D3, the science of a healthier life.
Matapos ang ilang dekada, gayon ay magbabalik na. Muli ay magserbisyo sa balita at impormasyon. Numero 1, DYRP Live Radio 1017 kHz sa iyong AM radio. Sa Iloilo ang radyo mo, DYRP Live Radio. Sa balitang may integridad at prinsipyo, Live Radio. Mula noon hanggang ngayon, asahan ng tunay na serbisyo para sa mga tao. Tayo na sa station sa Iloilo. DYRP Live Radio 1017 kHz sa iyong AM radio. Sa Iloilo ang radyo mo, DYRP Live Radio. Sa balitang may integridad at prinsipyo, Live Radio. DYRP Live Radio 1017 kHz sa iyong AM radio. Sa Iloilo ang radyo mo, DYRP Live Radio. Sa balitang may integridad at prinsipyo, Live Radio. Handog ng JPG Broadcasting Network at Allied Broadcasting Center, Live Radio.
Natababati ka mo sa DYRP 1017 kHz sa Allied Broadcasting Center, JPG Broadcasting Network. Tag-ini ang Lacse Radio Iloilo.
Welcome to our reunion!
Uy, Nay! Nagniwang ka! Hindi ka na bloated at hindi na constipated ang tsura mo!
Tungod din sa Super Fiber!
Ano?
Super Fiber!
Super Fiber. May powerful detoxification effects ang plant fibers, prebiotics, and alkaline food. Lowers cholesterol levels, helps control blood sugar levels, normalize bowel movement kag immunity booster, and prevents colorectal cancer. The fast-acting colon cleansing product approved by the FDA Philippines. Para sa masulhay ng pagpamuhin, Super Fibers ang Life Extension Philippines. Babakal sa mga butika.
Life Extension Vitamin D3.
Ating pakinggan si Dr. Bernie Ong.
Magandang araw po. Ako ay si Dr. Bernie Ong. Maraming vitamin D3. Pero bakit Life Extension Vitamin D3 ang aming nire-recommenda? It is because for the past 40 years, Life Extension has its research and development center in Florida. So we are completely assured that we can offer our customers the quality, the potency, and the purity that they deserve. Para po sa inyong proteksyon, siguraduhin niyo lang po na tunay at genuine na Life Extension products ang inyong bibili.
Life Extension Vitamin D3, the #1 trusted brand of vitamin D3 by the medical doctors in the Philippines. Life Extension Vitamin D3, the science of a healthier life.
Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. Kabalo-bala ka mo nga ang Vita D Plus Coffee Mix ang nagabalik na pinakauna nga kape nga may vitamin D3 with wide-ranging benefits. Ginsamuan pagid sang reishi mushroom, ang mushroom of immortality, kag mangosteen fruit extract para sa ikayong lahwas. Ang Vita D Plus Coffee Mix hindi lang basta kape. Saboroso kag may alibyo sa lawas mo. For me, the healthiest coffee. May kape ka na, may vitamin D3 ka pa. Vita D Plus Coffee Mix, fortified with vitamin D3. Pomety Capsule, the super antioxidant. Ang kapsula nga nagapakita sa mabaskog nga ebidensya sa pagpanubos ng PSA nga isa ka indicator sa presensya ng cancer sa prostate sa mga kalalakihan. Himo gikan sa pomegranate fruit, green tea, curcumin kag broccoli. Proteksyon batok sa mga free radicals nga posible makatuga sa mga balatian sa aton lawas. Pomety Capsule, the anti-cancer polyphenol. Life Extension Philippines Group of Medical Clinics and Pharmacies.
Hello, I am Dr. Elsie Herrera, internist nephrologist. I am one of the specialists that give free medical consult in Life Extension Foundation Iloilo. Pag may nabatsyag, konsulta. Ang top 2 gidya diabetes kag high blood. Hindi lang na siya masiling pabayaan-bayan tanang, no? Dapat makonsulta, hindi lang maghampol-hampol, hindi lang mag-herbal-herbal. Aton nga ginahatag sa inyong mensahe, amo ang early medical consult, early treatment, so that we can prevent what we call the complication of these different critical conditions, and then we can prevent death. Early diagnosis, early treatment, and early medical consult. That is being given by Life Extension Iloilo. You can contact any of the branches, and there are doctors, they are licensed medical practitioner that can deliver you care.
Life Extension Philippines Group of Medical Clinics and Pharmacies for longer life.
Life Extension Vitamin D3.
Ako si Dr. Faye Abigail Fortich. Pinili ko ang Life Extension Vitamin D3 dahil ito ay isang standalone D3 na puro, potent at de kalidad. Ito din ay 100% gawa sa United States by Life Extension Foundation na may solid track record and credibility since 1980 and has been awarded as one of the most top-rated vitamin D3 brands in the US. So why choose suboptimal? Choose the best. Choose Life Extension Vitamin D3.
Life Extension Vitamin D3, the #1 trusted brand of vitamin D3 by the medical doctors in the Philippines. Life Extension Vitamin D3, the science of a healthier life.
Vita D Plus Coffee Mix.
I would recommend my favorite coffee, Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. So may kapi ka na, may vitamin D3 ka pa. May reishi mushroom extract kag may mangosteen fruit extract. Kung imoy combine ini nga tatlo, may ara ini siya synergistic na benepisyo para sa aton nga ikaayong lawas. Ini si Dr. Marpa kag sa tanan mayong adlaw.
Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. Life Extension Philippines Group of Medical Clinics and Pharmacies.
Hi, ini si Dr. Manfred Marpa, member sa Medical Advisory Board sa Life Extension Philippines kag affiliate clinician sa Life Extension Group of Clinics. Ang malipayon kag may nabyanon nga nagaagda sa inyo nga mag-avail sang libre kag di kalidad nga medical check-up sa aton nga mga klinika. Agud malikawan ang mas malala nga mga balatian pinaagi sa mas temprano kag regular nga pagpa-check-up. Gani, magpalapit na kag magkadto sa pinakamalapit na Life Extension Clinic sa inyo duol.
Life Extension Philippines Group of Medical Clinics and Pharmacies for longer life.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Smith. I'm a medical doctor and senior health scientist of the Life Extension Foundation, USA. Many studies have shown that optimized vitamin D level may slash our risk of cancer development, especially breast, colon, prostate, and other types of cancer. Life Extension Vitamin D3 may also help us to regulate our sugar level and may also have benefits for the prevention of cardiovascular disease. I personally recommend a daily supplementation of Life Extension Vitamin D3 for everybody. This is the most practical and wise way to protect our health from diseases like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and a lot of other health conditions.
Life Extension Vitamin D3, the science of a healthier life.
Life Extension Vitamin D3.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Smith. I'm a medical doctor and senior health scientist of the Life Extension Foundation, USA. Many studies have shown that optimized vitamin D level may slash our risk of cancer development. I personally recommend a daily supplementation of Life Extension Vitamin D3 for everybody. This is the most practical and wise way to protect our health from diseases like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and a lot of other health conditions.
Life Extension Vitamin D3, the #1 trusted brand of vitamin D3 by the medical doctors in the Philippines. Life Extension Vitamin D3, the science of a healthier life.
Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. Subong aton pamatian si Dr. Manfred Marpa.
Coffee drinker ka bala? I would recommend my favorite coffee, Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. Bangod kay ang main ingredient niya sini is vitamin D3. Kag nakilalaan nyo naman kita kung ano ang aton nga paborito nga supplement nga gina-promote. So may kapi ka na, may vitamin D3 ka pa. May reishi mushroom extract kag may mangosteen fruit extract man ini. Kung imoy combine ini nga tatlo, may ara ini siya synergistic na benepisyo para sa aton nga ikaayong lawas. Ini si Dr. Marpa kag sa tanan mayong adlaw.
Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. Life Extension Vitamin D3. Si Ma'am Editha Delamide.
Sa una, tanayam, sige gidya, tanagwa sa nga dugo sa nipple. Nan ko lang na sa Life Extension D3. Proven ko gidira ako nag-ayo.
Life Extension Vitamin D3 for longer life. Kadamo sa mga produkto sa merkado nga puro pasalig nga makahatag sang alibyo sa aton ikayong lawas. Subong, aton ginapakilala ang Pommy Tea. Ini scientifically validated kag clinically proven nga produkto sa mga laboratory tests sa Europa nga nagpakita sang babaskog nga ebidensya sa proteksyon sang aton lawas batok sa mga balatian. Pommy Tea, rekomendado for men and women 16 years old and above kag highly recommended sa mga medical doctors ang Life Extension Medical Clinics. Tandaan, Pommy Tea Capsule, di kalidad nga produkto sa Confluence Health and Wellness Products nga exclusive distributors ang Life Extension Vitamin D3. Pommy Tea Capsule, Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. Mayong adlaw sa tanan. Nakapangapin na ba nakamudira? Para kumpleto ang inyong adlaw, mag-inom na sa Vita D Plus Coffee Mix nga may vitamin D3. Vita D Plus Coffee Mix fortified with vitamin D3. Reishi mushroom kag mangosteen fruit extract. Mabakal sa mga butika.
Aragay! Kasakit kisang tiyan ko. Hindi ako kapamuhin.
Mauga kaluluoy sa imo. Kag delikado na. Mabakal ko sa butika sang Super Fiber.
Super Fiber, ang pinakabago nga produkto sa Life Extension Philippines. May powerful detoxification effects ng plant fibers, prebiotics ag alkaline food. Likawan ang colon cancer pagi sa pag-inom sang Super Fiber 1 to 2 times a day, 15 minutes before breakfast or before sleep daily. Para mas epektibo, mag-inom sang Life Extension Vitamin D3 kada tapos kaon. Fast-acting colon cleansing product approved by the FDA Philippines. Para sa masulhay ng pagpamuhin, Super Fiber. Life Extension Vitamin D3. Kagsubong, aton pamatian si Ma'am Editha Delamide.
Kamusta na imo ma'am subong medical condition?
Okay na ng breast ko. Ati ko katori di napasuno mo ko napa-ultrasound. Wa abla nga dugo sa nipple. Sa kaluoy kag Ginoo, nag-okay na. Nan ko lang na sang
Vomity. Yes, vomity.
Tagura ko na pag ginadura ang anak ang life extension ang D3. Nay kay sang una tanayam sa anong painom kang mga vitamins, mga kun ano, bulong mga ibang mga herbal. O ay gidya sige gidya tanagwa sang dugo sa nipple.
Pero subong sang nag-life extension ka wala na gidya nagagwa.
O ay na.
Sino gani liwat ngalan ta ma'am?
Mrs. Editha Delamide. 65 na ako. Di try mo man ang life extension kay proven ko gidya mo nga dira ako nag-ayo.
Life Extension Vitamin D3 for longer life. Life Extension Vitamin D3. Kagsubong, aton pamatian si Ma'am Editha Delamide.
Kamusta na imo ma'am subong medical condition?
Sa kaluoy kag Ginoo, nag-okay na. Nan ko lang na sang life extension ang D3. Nay kay sang una tanayam sa anong painom kang mga vitamins, bulong mga ibang mga herbal. O ay gidya sige gidya tanagwa sang dugo sa nipple.
Pero subong sang nag-life extension ka wala na gidya nagagwa.
O ay na.
Sino gani liwat ngalan ta ma'am?
Mrs. Editha Delamide. Di try mo man ang life extension kay proven ko gidya mo nga dira ako nag-ayo.
Life Extension Vitamin D3 for longer life. Vita D Plus Coffee Mix.
Abyan, naidlaw ka na ba na magkape sang may vitamin D3, reishi mushroom kag mangosteen fruit extract? Nagbalik na. Subong Vita D Plus Coffee Mix na. Fortified with vitamin D3. Mas manami kag ginpanamit. Ang kape para sa ikayong lawas mo. Pwede sa may mga diabetes. Tandaan, Vita D Plus Coffee Mix na.
Vita D Plus Coffee Mix.
May kape ka na, may vitamin D3 ka pa. Mabakal na sa mga butika. May problema ka ba na sa imong pagpamuhin? Mag-Super Fiber, the fast-acting colon cleansing product aprobado sang FDA. Garantisado nga epektibo in just 2 to 8 hours. Mapagwa mo na ang mga higko ka pwede makahatag sa imo sa mga malalakag makamamatay nga sakit. Dirty colon is the #1 silent killer. Mas makita pagid nato na maayong resulta kung i-combine ang pag-inom sang Life Extension Vitamin D3 kag Super Fiber. Para sa healthy and good digestion, mag-inom adlaw-adlaw sang Super Fiber. Mabakal sa mga butika.
Pomity Capsule. Pomity.
Hello mga binananggana mo nga mga tagpalamate. Ang ini nga programa ginadulong sang Confluence Health and Wellness Products, ang eksklusibo nga distributor sang Life Extension Vitamin D3 in the Philippines. Abyan, nagapangita ka bala sang sigurado nga produkto para sa proteksyon kag depensa sang imo pamilya batok sa mga balatian. Ginapakilala ang Pomity, ang super antioxidant nga may anti-cancer properties bangod sang 4 ka aktibo nga ingrediente: pomegranate fruit, green tea, curcumin kag broccoli. Ginhimo sa Europa ang grupo sa mga medical doctors, scientists kag nutritionists. Sa ginapangunahan sang isa ka oncologist ukon cancer doctor nga si Dr. Robert Thomas. Sa inyo mga palamangkutanon, mag-text lang sa 0917-318-1720. Subong, aton pamatian si Dr. Manfred Marpa para sa Pomity Capsule.
Ini ang inyong Abyan, si Dr. Manfred Marpa. This time, luyag naton nga i-take ang opportunity nga i-introduce pa sa inyo ang isa ka very important, which I personally believe nga very beneficial sa inyo nga ikaing lawas. Ini nga food supplement ginatawag nga Pomity, nagaunod sang very powerful nga mga phytochemicals nga ginapatubas or ara sa mga tanom. May madamo ang mga benepisyo sa aton nga ikayong lawas, mga polyphenols. Imagine nga hindi lang isa ka superfood ang imo nga gina-take in, kundi 4 ang pomegranate, turmeric or curcumin, broccoli, green tea, nagabuligay ang ilang nga benefit sa isa kag isa. So ang team of experts nga ginahuman sa mga doctors, scientists, nutritionists kag under sa pag panguna sa isa ka oncologist. And to think nga cancer specialist nagka-interest sa pag-combine sa sining apat ka superfood, nakita nilang may dako ini nga papel, especially sa cancer prevention or even therapy. It is whole food supplement which is pomity. Dako gid sini ang iyang benepisyo sa atong kailangan. So that's why wala kita nagpangalagag nga i-introduce ini sa inyo ining pomity nga gindalagid sa Life Extension Philippines sagod inyo mabenefisyuhan. This time, testingin ninyo kay pamatudi ang benefits sang pomity sa inyo nga ikaing lawas.
Tandaan, Pomity, the anti-cancer polyphenol and the super antioxidant capsule, de kalidad kag sigurado nga epektibo batok sa mga balatian, highly recommended sa aton mga licensed medical doctors sa tanan nga mga life extension medical clinics and pharmacies. Pomity capsule, mabakal sa mga butika. Pomity capsule. Pomity.
Life News.
Alas 6:57 na sa gabi sa atong siring nga pagpangalagad sa gyapon diri sa programa
Crossfire.
ay dara kay hindi crossfire no. Special coverage klay nato no. Sige. Sa ato si motor ang makapensya lang gid ko medyo na dugay-dugay na pagbalik naton kay may mga ginasikaso kita diri no. Mga information kun kay isa nga way naton balagi na lauman nga golpeada lang nagkasululod no. May mga ginpang arrange lang kita prior sa aton sa nga pagbalik diri sa aton sa nga pagpangalagad. Okay. So kay ina gamay lang gid nga summary no sa tabo kay ina sa hearing no. Aran sa Abyan Aldrin, sige, lipot lang gid Abyan Aldrin no. Sa nasiling aton kay ina nga tinag ginpanumdom ni ICC Pretrial Chamber Presiding Judge Yulia Motok si Attorney Nicholas Kaufman nga sundon niya ang desisyon sang ICC Chamber sa reductions no. Angot ini sa sinasiling ko nakina sa paglimit, pagtabon sa pila ka dokumento at the same time sa mga laragway nga ginapresentar ni Kaufman kay ining tinutuyo sini makatag sang proteksyon sa mga tawo nga ara dira sa ginapresentar ni Kaufman no. Ti ambal ni Presiding Judge Motok siling niya, Mr. Kaufman, please proceed and you must respect the Chamber's decision regarding reductions. Otherwise, I will be obliged to interrupt you each time. Munambal niya, no? Dapat respetuhon niya kay kung hindi ipuntaton ini siya ni Moto kag i-remind angot sa ginapagwa niya sa ICC. Matandaan nga may pila na ka mga persona nga nag-question sa pila ka mga ginapresentar sa korte sa ilang mga pieces of evidence nga wala sang consent sa mga natungdan.
Serbisyong makataw, responsable at totoo. Life News.
Angot sini balikan tabi si Abyan Aldrin Sukinya update ni sa mag-asawa to no nga ara subong nasa police station no nagapaumpaw sa ilang balatyagon sang sila ang nagitay bangod ban kay ang bana wala ya ginalauman ang iyang asawa may pagaupdon nga iban nga kaliwat ni Adan nga iya lubos nga nahamutan pagsulod sa lodging house ilan na aguman ang kalipay nga wala sang katubtuban. Abyan Aldrin,
ang kalipay nga ida sining batunon subong ang kabaylo kalisod tungod nga papriso git sang bana ang asawa kag ang iya sining nobyo nga bago Sir Aljon.
Oo. So bawsi naman ni mahulog naman ni sa bawsi kag adultery.
According kay Police Captain Jimmy Lacuista, adultery ang kaso nga ipataw sila sa duwa no.
Abyan Aldrin,
Sir Aljon,
anong ginambal kay nasang asawa asang bana sa asawa niya sang laban-laban man balang bana nga sakit man sa akong gibalatyagon pero kinanglan ko ni gihimuot. Ang tag sa katinaga nga nagakawa sa akon sila nga baba. Ang hindi ko napunggan mongod sa ako nga pagpalangga sa imo. Nga sa tanan-tanan nga tiyon, ikaw ang ako ginapasulabi, pero anong ginhimo mo?
Hindi ko palangga ko ikaw. Ay, ito ko sa imo. Ay, lang ka may ibang. Ako ang maputuwasan. Kuya, palangga ko.
Maghipos ka! Wala mo gigitagaan sa biling pagpalangga ko sa imo. Gipat tubayaan mo pagpalangga ko sa imo.
Gay, palangga ako gitik ko. Palangga ako gitik ko.
Nagasakit ang akon nga balatsagon kag kasing-kasing. Sa tion nga akon nabatian nga akon nga asawa. Maiban nga ginaromansa. Sa di ba lang kaluhoy mo ngayon na? Sa di ba lang kaluhoy mo ngayon na?
Ako naman ay paluan na nakaaligtas mo na ko. Wala mo ngayon na mga paluan. Wala mo mga pagkitaan.
Uy, kasang
Ang
kaluhoy.
matungod sila. Ikaw ang ipalungin ko. Sa kataman. Dapat ang akong bibig. Sa bibig sa lalaki.
Bangod sini. Bangod sini, madunot ka sa parisuhan. Kay pasakaan ko gid kabus ang kaso. Abyan Armidel, ngawan mo na ginapakita ang materya sa pasa ko sa imo. Nauro nga ka sa drama namon. Pinaldrin?
Hindi siya natin kapata.
Oh, grabe, no?
Isa pa lang si Aljon, bata nila. Halin sa United Arab Emirates.
Nga ba lang nagahibi ikaw?
Naluoy ako. Naluoy ako.
Naluoy
Sa Aljon. Naluoy ako sa bana nga nagapaninguha nga magbira-bira sa obra sa Arab. Mainit nga lugar, Arab country. Tapos, amo lang niya mabtan niya. Masang pagpauli niya. Ulihin na pa uli si Aljon, no? Ining lalaki, kay ang babae gali, teacher. No, teacher man. Ang lalaki, civil engineer, kag 40 anyos, samtang ang babae, 37. Ang maestra, no? Kag ang lalaki, 30 anyos.
Ano naman mga maestra?
Ang babae, maestra.
Sus, maestra naman. Liga to maestra man?
Maestra mo to na ligat. Sumo, maestra naman.
Sus, Maria, kagusip. Ma'am, turuan mo ako ng leksyon.
Laban-laban gid ang 30 anyos kay medyo bata-bata pa ni.
Abyan Aldrin?
Sir Aljon.
Pwede ta ka balikan na lang liwat kay ari na naton sini ICC. Balikan ta ka liwat na okay lang.
Ito ka na ibang information ang otso ni. Para sa balita kami tigilitan sa prinsipyo, live radio.
Bito na naman ka muna ni Abyan Aldrin. Balikan ta naton sini ICC, no? Si Matrion ang tawag sini ang prosecution subong ang nagapresent sa ila sining argumento ang otso ni.
Appointed them to high positions. So when he appoints the chief of police, and part of the chief of police's job is to kill thousands of people, it's not a surprise that the police reports don't reflect that. If they decide to murder Mr. Espinosa and Mr. Yap while they're held in jail, it's not surprised that that can be done when Mr. Duterte appoints the head of the Department of Justice. Similar, he talked about, again, I'll get to it, talked about neutralize, and how that is a neutral word and needs to be taken in context. I'll come to that a little bit later. But again, there's evidence in this case, some of which Mr. Jeremy went through in his presentation, that neutralize meant to kill. Whether he is correct, or whether we're able to prove it beyond reasonable doubt is another issue. Whether we're at substantial grounds is clear. We are. And I just say, again, responding to his argument about the documentation, that it's not unique to this case. In war crimes trials, crimes against humanity trials, where the very top leadership are the persons on trial, and when they're committing their crimes, they don't put it in writing often, let's go out and commit a crime. Mr. Kaufman will know this because we both worked together at the ICTY. During the trials for Srebrenica and the other Bosnian Serb army crimes, the VRS, every single order that turned out to be criminal, virtually every single order, had in the order from the General Mladic down the chain, respect the Geneva Conventions, treat prisoners of war properly, treat civilians properly in accord with the Geneva Conventions. That was in virtually every order, and it didn't mean anything. It was boilerplate as part of their cover-up. I'll move on to some of his points from yesterday now. He spoke at length in the beginning about Article 7.1 and an alleged problem or inconsistency with the Al-Hishri case in our definition of the civilian population in this case. The law is very clear. All that Article 7.1 requires is that an attack is directed against any civilian population. That term, any civilian population in 7.1, is not limited to populations defined by nationality, ethnicity, or another distinguishing feature of that nature. It's a question of fact to be decided by the trial chamber. We have set this out, paragraphs 17 through 20 of our DCC. It is not particularly complicated. It is not blurry or ambiguous. We stated that alleged criminals in the Philippines are the civilian population, which are the object of the attack. That's a factual issue. So the position taken in the Al-Hishri case, which is different, obviously completely, factually to this case, is irrelevant. Second, the issue in Al-Hishri did not concern the definition of the civilian population. It was about the nexus requirement under Article 7 and whether it is necessary for victims of the underlying acts or crimes against humanity themselves to be members of the population. It was a different issue completely. And we have defined the population in this case. That just reminds me of what he said today at one point. Oh, well, these victims weren't necessarily related to drugs or the war on drugs. Read our brief. Read the DCC. It makes it clear that it's criminals, including drug dealers, drug pushers, drug users. The incident I went through, incident 3, in my presentation on Monday, I made it clear the victims there in Davao were alleged thieves. That is why they were murdered by Mr. Duterte. Very quickly, he complained or spoke about well, no, I'm going to skip that, Your Honor. It's not important. Moving on, he also made yesterday multiple comments that were inaccurate about the common plan alleged in the case. First, he said there was no direct evidence that even two of the co-perpetrators met in person to discuss the plan, the common plan. Legally, there's no requirement that they do so. However, factually, what he stated was incorrect. We have brought evidence of such meetings, and they're in our pre-confirmation brief. I won't go through it, but if you look at paragraph 27 and the items cited in footnote 135 of that paragraph, it sets it out. I'll come back now to the meaning of the term neutralize in the context of this case. It's open to interpretation in the abstract, but my friend, in trying to persuade Your Honors to take the view that neutralize didn't mean anything nefarious, quoted statement from Chief Ronald Bato de la Rosa, co-perpetrator de la Rosa, that neutralize did not mean to kill. That was at T006, page 31, lines 2 to 11. So he's been criticizing the credibility of our witnesses. Cites the police chief to say, the police chief who signed CMC 16, to say that neutralize is a neutral term that shouldn't be taken as showing any criminal intent. But we set out in our brief multiple witnesses for the mayoral period and for the presidential period who will testify that to neutralize means to kill. That's again set out in the brief, paragraphs 6 and 24. I'll read out just one example. This is ERN PHL OTP 000-15390-R01 at 0011, lines 345 to 346. Question of this insider witness. Okay, and the words eliminate and neutralize, what do they mean? Witness's answer, kill. You have to kill, whether it is a legitimate operation or not a police operation. So all of the dancing around about the term neutralize doesn't rise to the level where we would not be meeting our standard for confirmation today. One more example, my friend talked about it today. This is incident 13, in which the murder victims were Mayor Espinosa and Raul Yap. As we showed on Tuesday, Mr. Duterte, I won't play the video again, identified Espinosa as involved in drugs and said that he should be shot on sight and tracked down like a dog. And Mr. Kaufman said, yes, but Mr. Espinosa surrendered. And then tried to portray the murder of Espinosa in a jail cell as legitimate self-defense. In a jail cell, there's a shootout. The telling point here, as we said on Tuesday, transcript 5, page 10, lines 9 to 10, in the PRRD list, it was brought up, I believe, in the presentation. These two victims of incident 13, they are noted as neutralized on the list, not on the day they are arrested, not on the day they go to jail. They're marked neutralized on the days they're killed. So they were neutralized at the time they were murdered, per Mr. Duterte's government at that time. As I said in my submissions on Monday, right from the beginning, we acknowledge throughout his speeches, Mr. Duterte and some of his co-perpetrators, I used the term allies on Monday, referred to shoot to kill and self-defense, and that they sprinkled in these references to due process and legality. The evidence shows, as I said, that was only to build a veneer of legality, to create an impression of legality, and to give his lawyers something to say when this day came. And that's exactly what has happened. Mr. Kaufman has gone through, repeated these, when he can, as some kind of mantra that supposedly exculpates his client. Does not. As I said, this is the lawyer, Duterte, trying to build in a defense in case he was ever held to account for his crimes. The facts can't be denied by these sprinklings. He ran a death squad in Davao that he created. He ran it for over 20 years before he became president. His promise was to kill thousands, and he did. So it doesn't matter how many times he tried to throw in a caveat. And again, as I said, this is not uncommon in crimes committed by powerful figures. They try to build in a defense. One point Mr. Kaufman made yesterday, again, showing why this case is ready to go to trial and should not be dismissed. He refers to witnesses providing what he says is exculpatory evidence. He misstated these witnesses by saying they were OTP witnesses. They're not. We're not relying on them, but their statements are disclosed. We found these witnesses and interviewed them through the process that he portrays as somehow corrupt or biased or I don't know what. They provided exculpatory information, and we disclosed it. And that is somehow meant to say that this case should not go to confirmation? I mean, these witnesses are interviewed under 55-2. They're as suspects. Is it really unusual that when you're interviewing somebody who was involved in the crimes, that they say, I didn't do it? Does that mean that this case should not go to trial? Again, we go to trial. He can call those witnesses. The trial judges will listen to his witnesses, listen to the OTP witnesses, and then decide if we've proven our case beyond reasonable doubt or not. I'll speed up a bit, Your Honors, because I don't want to go over my time. He made a small point I just have to respond to, making a call. Why aren't there more investigations? Why aren't crimes being investigated now in the Philippines? Well, his client prevented all that by withdrawing the Philippines from the Rome Statute when he thought he might be prosecuted, thereby ensuring that we would not have jurisdiction after a certain period. Another point. My friend is trying to kind of have it both ways on how Your Honor should treat Mr. Duterte's utterances, his speeches, his words. On day 1, T0004 at page 30, lines 18 to 19, my friend said, Duterte's word was his word and the people knew it, end quote. Yesterday, worried about his client's confessions, that's what they are, he said, quote, this is at T0006, page 7, lines 5 to 7, he said, quote, one cannot rely on anything coming out of Mr. Duterte's mouth. All right, that's good to know if he ever decides to testify, and for his representations on interim release, that you can't trust a word that comes out of his mouth. But beyond that, as I went through on Monday, 3 times under oath, Mr. Duterte said in committee hearings, I have a death squad. Is Mr. Kaufman saying that his client is a liar and a perjurer who has no problem lying under oath? Limited use statements. I won't go through all the, frankly, nonsense that we heard about limited use statements. What I want to make clear, he tried to create an impression which is just not true. Not one witness has been granted immunity in this case. None. There is no such thing as virtual immunity or whatever he called it. He said something similar today. It's standard practice to use these statements when interviewing suspects under 55-2 who have rights, and they do not grant immunity. It just means a statement can't be used against that particular witness. And if they lie during those statements to us, to the OTP, then the agreement is void and they can be prosecuted. And his suggestion somehow that we should not interview the direct killers, Mr. Duterte's killers at the bottom of the pyramid, they shouldn't be interviewed, that's clinically insane from a prosecution point of view. And of course, some of those persons will get limited use statements if their lawyers request them. And finally, we're here in this court to prosecute the most responsible, and the most responsible is his client, former President Duterte, not the people on the ground who committed the killings. They are responsible, but they are not the most responsible. And unlike his client, the ones who have come forward have shown remorse for what they have done. His client, contrary to everything he said in the last few days, the last 3.5 hours, repeatedly admitted committing the crimes we're here for. His killings of his own people, the Filipino people. We saw some of those in our presentations. I'm sorry, I missed one point. He said there was no linkage of the incidents to Mr. Duterte. He said, my friend, not one incident where the direct order came from Mr. Duterte for one of these incidents. Well, he should look at incident 1 of the ones we have charged. And I'm afraid I don't have my cite because I skipped around. But in that incident, the evidence shows that we have a witness who heard Mr. Duterte on the phone, who heard that the order came from Superman, his client's code name and nickname. Mr. Jeremy is helping me. It's at para 89 of our brief, Your Honors. So that was wrong. That is, I just wanted to reply. He said that several times. It's not true. Back to Mr. Duterte. He's proud of his killings. He wants to be remembered for them. Decades of murdering his own people, murdering the children of the Philippines. And he claims that he did it all for his country. He doesn't deny it. He says, as I said early on, it's a necessary evil. It's for the greater good. Doesn't matter how many kids I have to kill. I'll clean up the Philippines. Now I want to play a clip, Your Honors, if we can do that, James. This is, you'll see the beginning. I played just a few seconds of it. I'm going to play more of it now, about 2.5 minutes.
Life News.
Alas 7:24, no? May gina-play sila nga video nga wala audio. Okay. Sige. Okay.
Na ginawa ko man ang lahat sa panahon ko para may konting katahimikan at mapayapa ang buhay ng Pilipino. Ang problema nito, ewan ko kung ang tingin ng ako'y raw yung o ganito na lang. Ito ganito na lang. O sabi ko, assuming na totoo, totoo talaga yung naririnig ninyo. Bakit ko ginawa yan? Para sa sarili ko?
Antisadak po ni sa dahig. No?
Para sa pamilya ko? Para sa inyo at ang inyong mga anak sa ating bayan. Ang higain ko na lang sa inyo, total, kung ganito man talaga ang swerte ko sa buhay, okay lang, tatanggapin ko yan. Wala tayong magawa.
Excuse me, Counsel, you have 5 minutes left.
Hulihin tayo kung ikulong tayo. Kaya lang, meantime, mag-contribute kayo, baski $5, $10, para paglabas ko sa presuhan, paggawaan ninyo akong monumento katabi ni Rizal. Si Rizal may hawak na libro eh. Akin.
Okay, what do we see there? This is essentially Mr. Duterte's farewell speech. It was made on 9 March last year, 3 days before, as he says, he was apprehended. He was not going to surrender, apprehended and surrendered to The Hague. What did we see there? First, I won't repeat it, shows total, utter contempt for this court. Second, referring to, quote, his sin, end quote, he says, assuming that all the talk you hear is true, assuming it's all true, why did I do that? What is the talk that's all true? It's obvious. After he says that, he says, problem is, they think I'm the one who, and the crowd cheers. Again, he doesn't say it out loud because he knows he's on video, he doesn't want the words there, assuming I'm the one who killed all these people. So he makes a little motion, crowd goes wild, and he smiles because he likes that after he's made that statement. What innocent person has ever said, assuming I committed all these murders, it was for a really good reason? That's what they would like you to believe, that he doesn't mean it. And he says he did it not for himself, not for his family, but for the Filipino people, and it's obvious what he's talking about. He's talking about the murders. Again, the ends justify the means. Again, for him, the murders are a necessary evil for the greater good, as we heard right at the beginning of his career when he's teaching police officers to plant evidence. At the end of that video, what does he ask for? He says, I might go to jail, what can we do? But when I get out, contribute money so there can be a monument erected of him when he's released from jail. And he describes what he wants that monument to be to himself, former President Duterte. A statue, not holding a book like the national hero Jose Rizal, but holding a gun. 3 days before his transfer to The Hague, this old man, you could see it still up there. What does he want to be remembered as? The man with the gun. And he's just taken credit for killing his own people. It's time for him to take responsibility for these crimes he brags about and glories in. Can we go to the next one quickly? I think I got about 3 minutes. James. This is tab 146.2. It's a quote from a speech on August 16th, 2017. What did he say? Quote, I know I will have my own downfall. I cannot be president forever. I know that they will demand to answer for all this dead. End quote. And he was right when he spoke those words. He must answer for the dead. The victims demand it, justice demands it, and for purposes of confirmation, the evidence demands it. We have proven it to the level for this to be bound over for trial. We ask you to do that, Your Honors. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur
Thank you very much, Mr. Nichols. We will now go to the closing statements of the common legal representatives of victims. You have up to 12:30.
Va présenter les arguments en conclusion de cette audience.
Maître Andres will present the closing statements. George Motok, you have the floor, Mr. Andres.
Your Honors, good noon. In our closing statement, the common legal representative for victims will first rebut the defense submissions. Then we will provide the larger context why the confirmation of the charges against Mr. Rodrigo Roa Duterte is vital for the victims, especially in relation to their communities and the Filipino nation. Your Honors, listening to the defense submissions on the merits yesterday and today was to me like listening to the parable of the elephant wherein they want us to see only the parts of the elephant: the trunk, the tusk, the ears, the head, but not the whole of the elephant. We must look at the whole context. Madam President and Your Honors, it's also my duty as the common legal representative for victims to express the views and concerns of the victims. As they're watching these proceedings, they have stated, and when they heard the defense effectively submitting that the chamber should ignore the systematicity and the widespread nature of the attack, it's like their murdered loved ones are being murdered again. Having conveyed that as my duty, we will address the defense submissions in seriatim with 10 rebuttals. First, on Mr. Rodrigo Duterte's speech, defense argued yesterday that, and I quote, "Relying on the former president's speeches as a means of proving criminal intent is impossible." I am quoting the transcript of yesterday at page 4, lines 5 to 6. But the victims convey that the Philippine context is vital in knowing and understanding the criminal intent and impact of Mr. Duterte's speeches. Under the Philippine Constitution, the executive power shall be vested in the President of the Philippines. Whatever the President publicly states is policy. And in the Philippine cultural context, when there is strong respect for those in government positions, especially the President, as head of state and as head of government, the words of the President is to be obeyed no matter what. Especially for Mr. Duterte, he has portrayed himself as a man of his word. The defense even emphasized, and the prosecution also referred to this last Monday, that, and I quote the defense, "For President Rudy, his word was his word, and the people knew it." End of quote. And that's the transcript of Monday, page 30, lines 18 to 19. The defense even stated that, and I quote, "Rodrigo Duterte was and will always remain a unique phenomenon." End of quote. Referring to the transcript last Monday at page 30, line 14. Mr. Duterte was and is indeed a unique phenomenon in the public and vulgar way in which he used his words to dehumanize the victims of his anti-drug campaign, to excuse their murder, to shape the Filipino psyche to his murderous rhetoric, and to predispose the government agencies under his presidency to follow his words as presidential policy and as orders. And the records show that every time Mr. Duterte exhorts the killing, the murders of alleged drug users, people are murdered all over the Philippines. To our second rebuttal, we rebut the defense legal theory in its Thursday submissions vis-a-vis count 1, which contains 9 incidents of murder during the mayoral period of the suspect. The defense argues concerning count 1 that this is allegedly, and I quote, hardly widespread. And I'm quoting the transcript of 26 February 2026 at page 6, line 23. We strongly disagree. Widespread refers to the scale of the attack. Courts and commentators interpret it through several indicators, such as the large number of victims, the killings, the deportations, rapes, or other acts affecting many people. Geographical spread, wherein the violence occurs across multiple towns, regions, or a broad area. The long duration, the sustained attacks over time, rather than isolated incidents. The mass impact on the civilian population. The attack affects the population as a whole, not just a few individuals. The focus is on the quantitative magnitude. The attack is large in scope or effect. Systematic, on the other hand, refers to the organized nature of the attack. It is about how the violence is carried out, where there is pattern or methodical plan, repeated similar acts showing coordination, organizational policy or approval, wherein there's the involvement of the state or organizational structures, use of resources, logistics, weapons, or personnel deployed in an organized way. Regularity in pattern, not random or spontaneous, but structured. This is a qualitative criterion. The attack is carried out according to a plan, policy, or organized pattern. In the Nataganda case, the trial chamber has held in 2019 that, and I quote, the assessment of whether the attack is widespread is neither exclusively quantitative nor geographical, but must be carried out on the basis of all the relevant facts of the case. End of quote. In fact, in Nataganda, the trial chamber once again emphasized that, and I quote, the term systematic reflects the organized nature of the acts of violence and the improbability of their random occurrence. It refers to the existence of patterns of crimes evidenced by non-accidental repetition of similar conduct on a regular basis. End of quote. In reviewing the evidence in the record of this case, the only reasonable conclusion is that the attack against the specific group within the civilian population, individuals perceived as linked to drug crimes, was widespread and systematic. Contrary to the statistics shown by the defense, there is ample evidence about the high number of murders in this case. Third, on the death rate. Based on the 2019 trial chamber judgment on Nataganda, there is no requisite death rate in order to prove crimes against humanity for murder. Fourth, we rebut the defense legal theory in its Thursday submissions, which refer to the chapeau elements of Article 7 of the statute. The defense argues, inter alia, that allegedly, and I quote, this policy did not and could not constitute an attack directed against a clearly definable civilian population. End of quote. And I'm referring to the transcript of yesterday at page 10, lines 16 to 17. We disagree. Since the chapeau elements of Article 7 of the statute provides for, and I quote, widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population. End of quote. As the element of crimes provide, and I quote, attack directed against a civilian population in this context, elements is understood to mean a course of conduct involving the multiple commission of acts referred to in Article 7, Paragraph 1 of the statute against any civilian population, pursuant to or in furtherance of a state or organizational policy to commit such attack. End of quote. It is also essential to note that on the targeting of a specific category of civilian population, the pretrial chamber has held in the situation in the Republic of Kenya that, and I quote, the chamber takes into account the information relevant to the status of the victims, their ethnic or political affiliation, as well as the methods used during the attacks. End of quote. The same pretrial chamber in the situation in the Republic of Kenya further held that, and I quote, the issue of whether an act was committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack needs to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis with regard to each particular act. End of quote. Applying this legal principle to the case at hand, we have argued that the evidence on the record unequivocally shows individuals targeted by Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign overwhelmingly came from impoverished communities where social mobility is limited and opportunities are scarce. The same type of people in the same type of communities using the same modus operandi were targeted by Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign. People from the vulnerable communities, the poor and marginalized, especially in urban, informal settlements marked by high levels of poverty. Thus, we have shown last Tuesday, Your Honors, that Mr. Duterte's anti-drug campaign was really a war against the poor. Consequently, the document containing the charges was not, and I quote, muddled, end of quote, as argued by the defense in the transcript of yesterday at page 8, line 8. Rather, consistent with the chapeau element under Article 7 of the statute, the DCC in paragraph 17 refers to the, and I quote, widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population in the Philippines, end of quote, referring to paragraph 17 in the DCC. While the DCC in paragraph 20 specifies that this attack was against, and I quote, alleged criminals in the Philippines who were perceived or alleged to be involved in drug-related, including production, sale, and use, and other crimes such as theft and murder, end of quote, referring to paragraph 20 of the DCC. The latter, in paragraph 20, is merely a subset of the former in paragraph 17 of the DCC. Again, this framing in paragraph 20 of the DCC is synonymous with the framing in the situation in the Republic of Kenya, wherein police violence targeted perceived gang members. Fifth, the defense yesterday referred to Philippine Supreme Court issuances. And I quote, the defense inter alia referred to, and I quote, Supreme Court of the Philippines in petitions challenging aspects of the anti-drug campaign, end of quote. Referring to transcript of yesterday at page 26, lines 10 to 11. Madam President, Your Honors, I and Attorney Buturian are familiar with these petitions referred to by the defense because we were actually the petitioners' counsels in those petitions. And we actually argued before the Philippine Supreme Court last 2017 on this issue. Nevertheless, the defense critiqued the prosecution's manner of using the quote, Duterte's administration's year-end report for 2017, referring to PHL OTP 0003-3355 or tab 139 for the defense. Specifically, the defense argued that vis-a-vis the, and I quote, deaths of 3,967 drug personalities, end of quote, that, and I quote, these deaths comprise a fraction of the 118,287 total arrests for drug-related activities, end of quote. And I'm referring to the transcript of yesterday at page 32, line 1. Nevertheless, Your Honor, the same Supreme Court decision or resolutions referenced by the defense has stated with respect to those 3,967 drug personalities who died in the anti-drug operations from July 1, 2016 to November 27, 2017, as indicative of the state policy of extrajudicial killings under the Duterte administration. As held by the Philippine Supreme Court in its notice of resolution dated April 3, 2018, which is PHL-OTP-003-3058, and which is tab 112 for the defense at pages 46. I quote the Philippine Supreme Court. Aside from the OSG's submissions in the present cases, we take judicial notice of the Duterte administration's 2017 year-end report, where deaths in cases related to illegal drugs and the internal cleansing conducted within the Philippine National Police are touted as accomplishments. And Your Honor, the next sentence is emphasized in the original resolution. The government's inclusion of these deaths among its other accomplishments may lead to the inference that these are state-sponsored killings. In the section Fighting Illegal Drugs and subsection Real Numbers, we find the following figures. And Your Honor, I will just quote the one that was in emphasis in the resolution. 3,967 drug personalities who died in anti-drug operations from July 1, 2016 to November 27, 2017. As well as 16,355 homicide cases under investigation from July 1, 2016 to September 27, 2017. 6. The defense referenced, again, the same Philippine Supreme Court resolution. But that same resolution held that nothing else to substantiate the OSG's claim of legitimate police operations. And I quote that specific portion in the Philippine Supreme Court's Notice of Resolution dated April 3, 2018, which is tab 112 for the defense at page 47. The Supreme Court held that, and I quote, apart from these numbers and their bare allegations, there is nothing else to substantiate the OSG's claim of legitimate police operations. The lack of any submission of the required information and documents leads this court to believe that there is no basis to the OSG's claim. It is Hornbook doctrine that bare allegations unsubstantiated by evidence are not equivalent to proof, i.e., mere allegations are not evidence. End of quote. 7th, Your Honor. Again, in reference to the same Supreme Court resolution referenced by the defense, the Supreme Court also held there that the PNP cannot claim presumption of regularity on deaths occurring during police operations. Your Honor, I will quote that specific portion of the Notice of Resolution dated April 3, 2018, which is tab 112 for the defense at pages 47 to 48. The Supreme Court held, and I quote, the PNP cannot claim the presumption of regularity in official functions because deaths are not supposed to occur during any of their operations. The presumption of regularity in the performance of official duty must be seen in the context of an existing rule of law or statute authorizing the performance of an act or duty or prescribing a procedure in the performance thereof. The presumption also cannot prevail over positive averments concerning violation of the constitutional rights of the accused. And Your Honor, in the next paragraph, all of it is being emphasized in the original. And I quote the emphasized portions. The Duterte administration's 2017 year-end report states that there were 3,967 drug personalities who died in anti-drug operations from July 1, 2016 to November 27, 2017, and 16,355 homicide cases under investigation from July 1, 2016 to September 27, 2017. This is a total of 20,322 deaths during the Duterte administration's anti-drug war from July 1, 2016 to November 2017, or an average of 39.46 deaths every day. This court wants to know why so many deaths happened, as expressly reported under the section Fighting Illegal Drugs of the Duterte administration's 2017 year-end report. Next, Your Honor. The Philippine Constitution provides for the right of life in Article 3. Therefore, because of that right to life, there is actually no presumption of regularity if a person is killed during a police operation. And actually, the presumption is reversed. It's actually the onus probandi on the police to prove that his or her actions were within the lawful requisites of self-defense. In fact, Rule 15.4 of the 2013 revised PNP operational procedures mandates the proprio motu investigations if death occurs during a police operation. However, Your Honors, despite the at least 3,967 deaths under anti-drug operations, there was no proprio motu investigations for all of these deaths. 8, Your Honor. The defense yesterday referred to the Philippine National Police Operational Procedural Manual issued in 2021. But the same was irrelevant and a non sequitur with respect to how the PNP construed and applied the word neutralize under CMC 16-2016 from July 1, 2016 until March 16, 2019, which is within the temporal jurisdiction of the court. The defense recognizes that the same Philippine National Police Operation Procedural Manual was published in 2021, specifically in September 2021. And it was already after the temporal jurisdiction of this court. Hence, it's irrelevant with respect to this case. 9th, the defense asserted that purportedly, the Duterte's administration is, and I quote, intolerant for rotten apple police officers, end of quote. That's in the transcript of yesterday at page 32, line 20 to 21. This is not true, Your Honors. Mr. Duterte's administration has not criminally prosecuted the police officers responsible for the government-recognized deaths of at least 3,967 drug personalities who died in anti-drug operations from July 1, 2016 to November 27, 2017. In fact, the undisputed fact in this case is that the Philippines only investigated
Excuse me, counsel. You have 5 minutes left.
At most 302 cases. And I refer to the February 27,
2023.
January 26, 2023 decision of this chamber on the authorization pursuant to Article 18, Paragraph 2 of the statute to resume the investigation. The court here, the chamber has held, the chamber observes that at the time of the prosecution's request, the DOJ panel had referred to the NBI for investigation in case build-up 302 cases consisting of 52 PNP IAS cases, the non-laban cases, and 250 NPS cases. And in paragraph 39, from the information before the chamber, it therefore appears that the DOJ panel review does not amount to relevant investigations within the meaning of Articles 17 and 18 of the statute. Moreover, The number of cases reviewed by the DOJ panel, namely 302, is very low when compared with the estimated number of killings that allegedly occurred in the context of war on drugs operations. Res ipsa loquitur. Mr. Duterte's administration has not criminally prosecuted the police officers responsible for these deaths. Last, Your Honor. The defense erred when it conflated Ms. Paulina Masida's statement that Rodrigo Duterte failed to prevent or punish with the theory that the prosecution has not charged command responsibility under Article 28. Ms. Masida's comment on the fact that Mr. Duterte did not take steps to investigate and prosecute was pronounced in the context of her submissions on the fact that encouragement of killings through public statements by Mr. Duterte sent a clear message that those responsible need not fear accountability and can act with impunity. Said comment cannot be extrapolated from that context, as the defense did yesterday. We do not suggest that Mr. Duterte should be liable under Article 28 of the statute. We maintain that there is ample evidence for confirming the mode of liability under Article 25(3)(a) as pleaded by the prosecution. Also, we want to emphasize, Your Honors, that there were indeed children murdered systematically under the charges that are being held against Mr. Duterte, Your Honor. And they are not mere collateral damage. In conclusion, the victims submit that the defense has not blemished the prosecution legal theory and evidence as provided in the document containing the charges and the pre-confirmation brief. The victims submit that the prosecution presented sufficient evidence to establish substantial grounds to believe that Mr. Rodrigo Roa Duterte committed each of the crimes charged. Consequently, all charges should be confirmed and Mr. Rodrigo Roa Duterte committed to trial. Lastly, Your Honor. Your Honor, the victims want these charges to be confirmed because they want to be reintegrated to their communities, because they are still in the shadows of fake news, of fear and of threats from Mr. Duterte's supporters. Hence, it's important, Your Honor, that all of these charges be confirmed against Mr. Duterte so that the victims of these crimes will be taken out of the shadow of darkness into the light of truth and justice. Because in the end, Your Honors, the victims, they're also created in the image of God, and they also believe that the God of the universe is the God of justice. Madam President, Your Honors, thank you for your kind attention. This ends the presentation, the closing statement of the Common Legal Representative for Victims. May it please the Chamber.
Judge Motok. Thank you very much, Mr. Andres. We will now take our break and resume with the final submissions of the defense at 1400 hours. The hearing is suspended.
Life News.
Alas 8 in punto, gid ba? Grabe ah. Sige, sa aton si Moktoran Makabenan, ulat-laton naton after sining break no sa final submission sa defense sa ining mga ginpang isa-isa no sa prosecution sa mga pieces of evidence, circumstances leading to the guilt of former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte as to the case against him, no? Sa aton sini nga mga kuto na makabanan ining crimes against humanity. I-check nato na ni karon paggarapon sa pila ka importanteng pahanumdom mga kabanan sa aton si Moktarambo nagguot kita sa aton ano no sige lang Ang ini nga porsyon makaben handol man sa aton sang super fiber sa aton si mukuturan, amligan ang aton nga digestive health, kag tinuwan ng colon, agud malikawan ang colon cancer, mag super fiber na. May connection na may nga colon sa pagdubo sa aton immunity. Para matinawa na mahigko nga colon, kag balikawan di regular nga pagpamuhing, bayinom sa super fiber. Sigurado ka garantisadong pag-aon sining mahigko nga madugay na nagatener sa aton nga large intestine, agud ma-absorb ang nutrients, vitamins, kag mineral sa aton nga ginakaon. Kag sigurado nga magsulhay aton adlaw-adlaw nga pagpamuhin, kag palayo kita sa delikado nga colon kag stomach cancer. Mag super fiber na. Oras alas 8:02.
Coffee Mix. Good day sa tanan. Umpisahi ang adlaw sa pag-inom sa Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. Nagbalik na ang paborito nyo kakape nga may vitamin D3, reishi mushroom kag mangosteen fruit extract. Manamit, makamot kag healthy nga kape. Vita D Plus Coffee Mix. Mabakal sa mga butika. Life Extension Vitamin D3.
Eduardo Bedia.
Subukan ko bukol sa tuo ko nga pa. Grupo ko yung sarap-sarap. Isa bumayo na lakas ko tungkol ginasigisigi ko ang life extension vitamin D3.
Life